Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Always a pleasure to have you guys here. And we're going to get into a great night of radio tonight. Swamp Dweller is having a little bit of technical difficulty right now. I'm just going to see if he can make it. And if not, we're going to go into a UFO story. So just give me a minute or two here. Well, there he is. There he is. The Swamp Dweller is here, which always makes for a good time. So let me just, 1 second here. I just got some technical. Swampy, I got you. I know you can hear me. I got you. I'll be with you here in 2 seconds here. Give me a minute and then we'll do the rundown here. Oh, come on. All right. Bear with me here, guys. All right, there we go. There we go. All right, let's get it started right off the bat here. As we got a quick roll call to do. Most of y'all have to just say off the air or well, type it in. But we have, let's see here, SJ in the gold medal position, Michael Fontaine with a silver, Race Fan in the bronze medal tonight. And hello, Robert Lamoth, Kitty Caddywhack, Tim Mothman's goatee, and Tim Mothman. Good to have you both here. Eternity Eternal, Trucker Andrew, nice to see you all. And Joanne is here. She'll be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. Moving on, we have Cosmic Joe, Lee the Bee. Thank you for coming on in. And Kitty Caddywhack. T-Bone, my man, how are you? Mel WD40 is here. Lubing us up for tonight's show because you always want to go into a show nice and smooth, people. You never want any of those rough edges. They're uncomfortable, so Mel lubes us up each and every single night. Flat Six, Ozzy, nice to see you guys. Blenny and my man, Paramarv, nice to have you here. Hi, Lee the Bee. And Operation Shutdown, good to see you guys. Little Cam over on Twitch is here. After doing 600 sit-ups to prepare for Swamp Dweller, Little Cam will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Brown Dwarf, nice to see you. Jay Truthseeker, Richard Minnick, thank you for coming on in. Hi, S. Vermette. And who is next? The hippie, Deidre, wearing her Birkenstocks as we speak with wool socks on underneath. Dragonfly, how you doing? Political Foolishness, nice to see you. Hi, Rock and Rory. And Algaray over on Twitch, leg press 700 pounds, 83 times in 17 minutes. Yep, he's jacked for Swamp Dweller tonight. Michael Fontaine, how you doing? Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We have a great show tonight. Swamp Dweller is here to tell us some spooky, scary stories from his legendary YouTube channel. We are in roll call right now. Oob to Joe's Main, you've got aliens as we continue on here. Cody Eiler, nice to see you. Hi, Scott Blight. And who's next on our list here? Scrolling on down. Digger Dog, always a pleasure to have you here. Hi, W. David Page. Vanessa, thank you for coming on in. Little Timmy Senor, thank you for kicking off the super chat tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Matthew Goodcut, good to have you here. And Woo Poo, how are you? Scrolling on down. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out, Bumblefoot, read the news wire. Check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We're going to have a power show of story time tonight. The legendary Swamp Dweller is here to share some spooky stories with us from his legendary YouTube channel, Swamp Dweller. Yeah, we love Swampy around here. Then in hour number 3, Swampy will join us for another spooky story, followed up by Lee, the big man, the extra small man. Lee will be joining us. Oh, I love calling him extra small. Yeah, Lee Strauss will be here for the Cryptid Report. Now, if you haven't found Swamp Dweller on YouTube, I'm going to tell you right now, you have to go type in Swamp Dweller in the search bar, hit subscribe to his channel. There's a reason over 300,000 people have subscribed to his channel. Why? Because he is one of the best storytellers of weird, strange legends in folklore. And it's not just that, it's true crime. It's stories of absolute sheer terror, true murders, true missing people, true tales of Bigfoot, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, and every monster and cryptid in between. How does he do it? I have no idea. But I could tell you this. Each and every night when I sign off this show, and I go crawl into bed, I do one thing. I put Swamp Dweller on in order to tuck me in to bed at night. And we're always glad to have our good friend Swamp Dweller here on Spaced Out Radio. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad, Dave. Glad to be here.
It is always a pleasure to have you here. I got to ask you, because since the first time I ever brought you on a few years ago, and I know we're one of the oldest shows that you will actually come on, so I thank you very much for that. But our audience is always changing and ever growing. You got into this how?
Well, it was kind of just like a very like happenstance type thing. I've always been super interested in cryptids and just all things anomalous. I used to go ghost hunting all the time with my friends, and I had a weird experience probably about 10 some odd years ago. And I went on a show called Dogman Encounters to kind of talk about it, and met a gentleman by the name of Vic Cundiff. And after that interview, he kind of said, I feel like you could be pretty good at this. So I gave it a swing. And all these years later, about 8 years later now, I'm still here and ever evolving.
Now, if I recall the story, you actually started this channel when you were homeless, living in your car, and you were trying to figure out what to do with your life, and this all kind of happened and fell into place. And now look at you, man. You're in a successful heavy metal band, and you know me, man. I love my metal. And number two, you have one of the most popular channels when it comes to telling these spooky, creepy stories. When you started this channel back in those days, did you ever think that it would get to where it is today?
Not at all, honestly. As you said, I was just, kind of working dead end jobs, and in my breaks, I would go to my car and record a video and, hopefully people would enjoy it. And, I honestly, when I started this, I was like, if I could just get like to 10,000 subscribers or something like that, I feel like I would feel successful. I feel like that this would all have been worth all the hard work. And I remember the day, I think it was sometime August, maybe a little bit before that, 2019, when I got that silver plaque for the 100,000 subscriber milestone. And it just definitely was a full circle moment to think that, man, it's like, hey, I would have been fine with just 10,000. So I would have been fine with 100, as long as people were enjoying what we were doing. And, it's just crazy to think that all these years later, we're still not only just still doing it, but we also have, 300 plus thousand people here now. And it just blows my mind every time I look at it.
Your videos that you post have tens of thousands of views each. How do you do it? Like I'm sitting here with 26,400 and some subscribers. How do you do it? I mean, you have to be on your computer every day, not only creating, but watching how the YouTube algorithms are changing, whether it's thumbnails, whether it's shorts, whether it's longer videos. I mean, how did you figure it all out?
Definitely trial and error like everybody else. Like the algorithm is the hardest thing. It's always changes, I'm sure as you know. And it just honestly, I just had to keep throwing things at the wall until it worked. And eventually I realized that, what people wanted the most was, these strange anomalous encounters, and they wanted them to be in, long portions. So I've just started putting out as long episodes as I could, with, making sure that we're not filling it with any filler content, as you will, just trying to make sure all the stories were quality. And I just think that it created a community of its own, to where, every different topics will definitely have different views, but for the most part, we've created like a really fun community over there, to where people are just super interested to hear, these allegedly true encounters, whether they be, supernatural or of this earth. And, I just think that it's kind of spoke for itself in that sense.
Absolutely. And you've built quite a following. And the one thing that I like about you, my man, is you're not competitive. Like you're competitive in getting the stories out there and everything, but you want everybody to have success. So if it's a rival channel, if it's a show like mine, if it's anybody of your friends out there who are watching and following you, you're always out there to not only help but give advice and do that. Why do you, in such a competitive nature of being an influencer and a storyteller, do you choose to do the opposite of what everybody else does? And that is actually help people.
Because I guess that kind of stems back to when I first started getting into music in the early days, and there was a lot of gatekeeping going on, and it was hard to get on shows and kind of just get your foot in the door. And I had a very similar experience when I first started the channel as well. There was a bunch of, people doing this at the time, and, I'd reach out and ask for advice, and very often kind of just, either get no response or very negative responses. So I figured, I just want to treat people how, I want to be treated. And that just kind of comes back to my upbringing. So I just, rising tides lift all ships. There's more than enough room on this website for us all. And, teamwork makes the dream work. So I'd rather have a great team of friends and, people around me that I could rely on and do work with, and see everybody win than burn a bunch of bridges and kind of be on this empire or throne by myself, if you'd want to call it that.
Did you ever see yourself being, I mean, going back to those days when you said you were hoping for 10,000 subscribers, did you ever see yourself being a social media influencer of high strangeness and storytelling? Did that ever cross your mind?
No, I think at that point I was just trying to not, I was just trying to make something of myself. So I guess, my interests were always in those things, but I never really thought that I would be, that person to say, oh yeah, I'm a influencer or YouTuber or creator or whatever the term is of the week. I guess when I fell into the whole Dogman hole, rabbit hole, and cryptids, and started really getting more knowledgeable about those things, I think I knew that this was probably something I would be, interested in, but I don't ever really think that I had any like premeditated thoughts that this would be like my career path or anything.
Let's go back to your own story that brought you to Vic Cundiff and Dogman Encounters, which is a very popular YouTube channel as well. What story did you share with him? What happened to you?
Well, it's a story I haven't told in a long time. And it's definitely one I still think about probably on a daily basis. Just because it's just one of those moments that I'm sure all of us have had in our life, to where it's like, what did happen to me? Like, was I stressed? Was I tired? What was going on? And I guess to tell the story, it's rather short. I was working at a Walmart at the time in rural Florida, and I was driving down the road that they filmed a bit of Jeepers Creepers on, actually. And it was like very foggy. It's a very flat road, very long, nothing much going on, just cow fields everywhere. And I remember seeing what looked like a dead animal or something in the road. And I was driving a small 2001 Honda Civic, so I was pretty low to the ground. And once I got up to it, it looked more like a fairly large bear. But we have the only bears we really have in this area are maybe some small black bears, nothing too crazy. So I kind of stopped probably like 10, 15 feet away from it. And I turned my high beams on, which I should have had them on anyway. But I turned them on, and this thing stands up. It's got these deep red amber type eyes, almost blood color red eyes. And it just looks at me. I don't really get a great look at it because when it stood up, my lights really only went up to about its chest. So I just see this hulking shadow in front of me, and then it just walks off into the cow field, basically steps over the barbed wire fence like it was nothing. And this has to be at least be like a 5.5 foot, 6 foot fence. Maybe I'm exaggerating that, but it was a pretty big fence, or standard fence. And it just disappears on into the darkness. And I sit there for probably like maybe 15, 20 seconds before I start driving again. And I just thought about it and thought about it for days after that. And that's when I had my first experience with sleep paralysis. I would just woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't move my body, but I looked at the end of my bed and I saw those red eyes again. And I just remember screaming, trying to wake up, and, eventually was able to move again and all that. So I started looking into it. I was like, what could this be? Werewolf, whatever. I looked into whatever I could find. And that's when I stumbled upon Dogman Encounters, and reached out to Vic Cundiff, and we talked a few times behind the scenes. And eventually, once I felt comfortable and confident enough that what I saw was potentially a Dogman, I went on the show and kind of explained a little bit more. And from there, just kind of continued to fall into it, did interviews myself for a while. And then from there, kind of started sharing people's stories.
Do you think that the sleep paralysis that you had that night was brought on by the Dogman itself, or do you think it was brought on by the absolute fear that was still in your body?
I think it could have been a little bit of both. I feel like part of it definitely was the stress. I don't know if I guess my fear manifested in stress in that situation. I just remember just my brain just racking, trying to figure out what the heck that was. Cause at that point in my life, like I kind of had some like ghost encounters maybe, and some weird, like unexplainable stuff like that, living in really old houses and stuff, but like nothing to where like my brain would like just be absolutely like turned upside down. And, just like I said, just seeing this massive silhouette where 7 feet at least, and it was, broad shoulders. It was big. Whatever it was big. I will still to this day concede that it could be something else. It might not be a Dogman, but from every story I've ever read, it's pretty much damn near spot on.
Your focus through this in trying to figure out the mysteries are out there. A lot of people will say you're creepy pasta. A lot of people will say that you are a storyteller of high strangeness. Where do you label yourself with your channel, Swamp Dweller?
I guess that would be the accurate label. I guess, stories of high strangeness. I've never really thought about the label. I just always said, you're home for all things natural and supernatural. So I guess you're pretty much spot on.
With the stories that you get, how many emails a day do you get from listeners or people who've had these encounters who just use you as the pin board to tell their story?
It definitely varies. It's definitely less now than it used to be, but over the last year or so, I'd still say close to 10 to 15 a day, something like that.
Wow.
Can definitely influx to be higher, just depending, I guess, on how well the channel's doing. Sometimes videos do better than some months than other months, etc. But for the most part, it's always a good handful a day.
So the fact that you get these out of those 10 to 15 emails that you get a day, how many stories are you actually producing out of those? That would, you look at it and you would say, this is something I can use.
I'd probably say like 6 out of 10 fairly can be used. Because I'll put a good amount of time into fixing people's stories. Because most people who are sending me what most people's experiences and stuff like that, they're not writers themselves. So as long as it's not so like basically, as long as there's like no, basically if there's like a wall of text and there's like no periods and stuff like that, I'm likely not going to want to mess with it very often. But if it's just like a wall of text, but it's got punctuation and stuff like that, or maybe some of the way they're wording it, maybe the spelling's pretty bad, like I'm willing to work with that and fix that and make it a legible story if there's actually substance to the story. A lot of times you'll get long-winded stories and nothing's really happening in them, and then you just don't want to waste your time on those. So like the quality control is definitely tough, but I would say probably like 60% of stories can pass the bar as long as I put a little TLC into them.
That number actually surprises me that it's that high. But I mean, you were looking for, and I know you well enough to, I think this is a fair comment. You were looking for realistic stories that people have experienced. Out of those 10 to 15, how many of those stories, when you read them, you're like, really? This is so made up. I really don't want to use this.
Now that number is probably exponentially higher. Finding like stories that will blow your mind, like how is this possible, is probably like 70% or so. A lot of them definitely like there's definitely a tendency where people start off telling a story to where you can tell that it is definitely based in truth and there's definitely some facts around it. But there oftentimes you can tell that people do try to embellish or start steering into more of that creepypasta realm to make it seem a little bit more exciting to potentially get their story picked. And that's usually when I'll kind of check out on a story and whatnot, because
Right.
you could tell like when they're talking a certain way most of the story, then suddenly we're veering off into this weird fantasy land type thing to where like, hey, I did a backflip and shot this skinwalker with 16 arrows. It's like, okay.
I bet you've seen it all. I really do bet you've seen it all regarding that. But I mean, do you find though that most people are at least trying to be genuine because they are either curious or absolutely freaked out that this happened to them, that they, because it's like with me, I live in a small town and people know I'm the weirdo of the town and I'm very much okay with that, but they'll come up to me, hey, you're that Bigfoot guy, right? You're the guy who does the ghost tour and all this. And I'll be like, yes, I do. I don't know how to talk about this because I had something happen to me. So I guess you must get a lot of that from people who just don't have that outlet to speak about this.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I get a lot of messages on social media just about people wanting closure or some sort of help identifying what they've seen a lot of the times. I guess, a common misconception is, since I cover this stuff so often, that I'm an expert on this stuff. And if you want to call me an armchair expert, sure. But I'm just I just know what I've kind of picked up from over the years. And I've done a lot of studying into a lot of this stuff, but I still wouldn't say that I'm any sort of super knowledgeable expert. I think I know as much as most others who are interested in this type of thing. But I think most people just want to feel heard, and they know when they come to my channel that I'm not going to call them crazy, even if they are sending me something that is pretty, crazy. But I'm usually pretty willing to listen and kind of give everybody a fair shot, because I've seen
Right.
crazier things just in the true crime side of things, to where you're like, that's not real. What the heck? So I just tend not to judge, and just check every story, give it all the benefit of the doubt, and if it passes the bar, it's going to be in the show.
What have you learned through all of this in your time of doing Swamp Dweller now, which I believe is on what, year 7, year 8?
I think we're on year 8. Yeah.
Yeah. What
Um,
have you learned about yourself in doing this?
I think I've learned that I have a lot more of an open and creative approach to life than I thought I did. I learned that a lot of people in life aren't willing to kind of just give people your ear and listen to people, and especially people who are coming to you with stories or just maybe life ideals that might be a bit opposite of yours. And I've definitely noticed a lot of people judge whether it be a person, story, whatever, off the cover of that before you actually hear what's going on or get the details of it. And I've learned about myself more than anything is that I seem to not have those walls up in place. I seem to be much more of a transparent human being when it comes to saying, hey, let's listen to both sides and like the whole side, and try to figure out what this story is before we start putting it in a box.
Do you believe a lot of these cryptids are real?
To an extent, I do. It's hard to say which ones I necessarily believe, but I would say this. I think the power of belief is the strongest thing that you can have in our society, and we have seen the power of belief do all kinds of things in life. We see it every single day. So I believe that there is a lot going on out there. To what extent, I'm not quite sure. Like I said, I think it's one of those mysteries of life. But I do to a pretty heavy extent. But I do like to still claim myself as a heavy skeptic.
Well, I think we all have to be skeptical in a way because, I mean, you just can't believe everything, but you have to try and believe that people are having these relatively unknown experiences that just cannot be explained by modern science or modern times. Have you ever had a story come up? And I've asked Lon Strickler from phantomsofmonsters.com this same question, but have you ever had a story of a monster come up where all of a sudden you've never heard of it before, and then all of a sudden there's like this run up on what it may be or what it may not be because multiple people have seen it?
Yeah, I think the first it was kind of interesting because the first time I'd ever heard of something called an amikook, I think it's something from like Alaska folklore. Um, it's not something I've heard much since then, but it was weird because when I first heard about it and first was sent a story about it, I did some digging, and it just felt like suddenly I was being sent quite a few stories about this creature out of nowhere. And there was like an influx of sightings, all from roughly around the same time frame and all that, same rough areas, and then it just stopped. And I guess this is one of those things to where I just haven't picked it up and looked into it again since. But yeah, this happens quite often. Honestly, I'll get sent stories from places all over the world, and I won't be super familiar with that culture, religion, whatever it might be, and they'll be talking about these creatures, demons, whatever, and I'll have to really educate myself to understand what I'm reading about. Because a lot of times I'll notice that's like if I have no idea what I'm talking about, it's hard to convey that fear or anger or whatever emotion you would likely be feeling if you were to see, say, an amikook.
Swamp Dwellers here for another 90 minutes on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to learn more about the creepy stories he talks about on his fabulous YouTube channel called Swamp Dwellers on Spaced Out Radio. Stay tuned, everybody. All right, man, we're clear.
Awesome.
Good start, buddy. Good start.
Yeah, my bad. I saw the thumbnail for the show come up when I was doing some editing, and I was on there. I was like, oh, I was like, wait, I was like, uh-oh, I put this on the wrong day on my schedule.
Oh, that's all right. Let me check mine just to make sure. No, I had you on for tonight, man.
Yeah, I messed up. I put it 10 days down the line. I was like, oh, I was like, no.
Thank you, though. I would have rescheduled if you needed.
No, I'm literally just sitting here. So there was not like I was actually doing anything.
Because you're one of the few who gets a free pass around here. You know that.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you. How's Florida?
It's Florida. It's mosquitoes and rain all day.
I am so happy the mosquito season is over here. Oh,
yeah, it's been bad here.
Nothing, no bites, no nothing. Just got to dodge the horse flies.
Oh, they're bad too.
Yeah, man. How's the band?
It's doing good. Busy. Always something new over there.
You guys going back out on tour before the end of the year or no?
Yeah. We're gonna be leaving next month for like 14 days. Gonna do the whole East Coast.
Nice.
Should be fun.
What's your role in the band?
I do the vocals.
Rock and roll, man.
Gotta make those Dogman noises.
You got that right. Yeah, love the metal, man. Love the metal. I ever tell you the story? 2 years ago, I took my my son. He was 9 at the time. I took him to see Avatar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man. Got front row. This big biker dude, this 6'7" biker dude. I'm standing there with my boy at the intermission right before Avatar comes on. And he yells at me. He goes, "You!" And I looking around and like, me? He goes, "Is this your boy's first concert?" I said, "Yes, it is, sir." He goes, "Trade spots with me. So that way you guys can hopefully get him a guitar pick."
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude. Heavy metal family is the best music family out there. No selfishness.
No, yeah, I love the metal world. You know, it's always a fun time at these shows. Never a dull moment.
Oh yeah.
I think it's fun. It catches people off guard. You know, most YouTubers and stuff are like, "Oh, I make hip hop music or whatever," and then I'm like, "Hey, check out my music," and it's just this very aggressive, in your face metal.
I'm a fan, man. I may not look like it, dude. Okay, don't let the gray hair and the ball cap and the horn rim glasses fool you. Old Dave's a metalhead, man.
Hey, I love to hear it. I've seen weirder people at the shows, honestly.
Yeah. See if I can hold on 1 second. See if I can show you something here quickly. Where is it here? Videos. There we go. Where is it here? This is my boy here, Swampy.
Oh, he's getting it.
Oh, just wait, man.
Oh, he's got the horns. Let's go.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, he throws them horns up like it's a battle cry, man.
Hell yeah, dude. I love that.
Audience members want to know what your band name is.
Burn Absolute.
Right on. Burn Absolute for people who missed that.
Even the band name's metal.
Love it. Love it. I'd come see you guys play. Totally would.
We'll make it to Canada one of these days.
Yeah, Vancouver.
It's just too cold up there, man. I'm telling you.
Summertime, man. Vancouver's a good metal town. I'll tell you that Vancouver still likes to rock.
I got to get over there. I definitely want to get more up there. I think our next goal is conquer West Coast and then probably try to get to Canada.
Right on, buddy. Right on. Big thank you to Tim for opening up the super chat tonight. Greatly appreciate the love and support. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. Let's make this happen. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Right before we bring the Swamp Dweller back on, I want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. With over 300,000 subscribers, this band knows how to entertain. They call him the Swamp Dweller, his YouTube channel, under the same name, where he tells spooky, crazy stories from monsters and legends to horror stories of real, true people on this planet. Swampy, welcome back, my friend.
Glad to be here, brother.
What does your band Burn Absolute think of you doing all this storytelling?
I think the thing that's caught them off guard the most is just like how many random people we meet while we're on the road that are like either like, what? You're Swamp Dweller? I listen to it all the time, like other bands and stuff like that. And it catches me by surprise as well. But I think for the most part, they just, it's out of sight, out of mind. So they don't really have too many thoughts on it. But I think it always kind of makes them be like, what the heck? Why do these people know who you are, dude?
How do you break that news to them? This is more of a humanity side of everything, but how do you break the news of that? Yeah, by the way, outside of the band, I tell weird, strange stories of aliens and Bigfoot and ghosts.
I pretty much just break it to them forward. I'm like, hey, so I'm an internet weirdo, and I cover some really weird stuff online. So if anybody tells you that your singer is really into Bigfoot, they're probably not lying.
Have they come to grips that there's weird things that happen now around the band?
Oh yeah, it's the best thing is I'll be just at the show having a good time, and now my band members are just bringing up random people. Hey, tell them that Bigfoot story. So I'm just like, oh gosh. So I've got all kinds of people coming up to me now, just giving me stories, and it would be great if I could remember them by the time I get home, but too many beers.
Oh, I hear you there. Beers and loud music go great together, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Especially when the beer is cold. Oh, just wonderful. You delve into so many different topics, from cryptids to UFOs, alien abduction, ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists, true crime. What's your secret favorite?
Honestly, probably the Native American folklore side of things. I love, like, whether it be like Wendigos, Wishugays, stuff like that, Nanahe. I just really love how those stories always tie into some sort of, life lesson, or just, kind of cautionary tale in a sense, to where, you listen to these stories and they're not only terrifying, but they always have some sort of thing that you can take from it and learn and apply to your own life.
First Nation stories up here where I live are very, very big. Okay, because in our area they have legends of little people, legends of Sasquatch, Dogman, the Star People. I remember talking to one elder here a number of years ago when I asked him, I said, well, what about the Bigfoot in your area? Have you ever had Bigfoot? He goes, no, I've never seen a Bigfoot. He goes, I just wish those damn Star People would leave my people alone for just once, because they were literally dropping the people off on the middle of the road. And next thing you know, that person still kind of dazed and confused about what happened, and they'd be hit by cars at times, and unfortunately, deceased because of the accident. I mean, there's so many stories out there of indigenous legend that I honestly think we have to pay more attention to those. I think they have more of the answers. The cultures, whether it's Cree or whether it's Salish or whether it's Mohawk or whatever, I truly believe they have a lot more answers than what we actually give credit to. What is your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree. I mean, you got like the Algonquin tribes where you got like the dreamers back in the day, like Charlie Yahe and stuff like that. And I think when they're having these, they're talking about these, dream expeditions that they'd be on where they would get, knowledge from ancestors or, get warnings from them, stuff like that. I feel like there's got to be, more to it, whether that's, extraterrestrial contact or, interdimensional type stuff. I think that, obviously with more of the disclosure stuff that's coming out that you talk about all the time on this show, I think that as we learn more about this stuff and you start looking at these First Nation stories, you can kind of see that it's kind of always been there. And it might have been even a little bit more detailed in these stories if you look at them, especially when it comes to like things like the Star People, like you're talking about, or the Dreamers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. You do a lot with Skinwalkers. I love your story on Skinwalkers. Do you have a story that you could share with us that really sticks out to you about these apparent medicine men who've gone rogue for eternity and
Yeah,
immortality?
yeah, definitely. Actually, there's so many. There's a couple that come out to my attention, but there's one that I believe it's on my channel called The Antlers. And it was this young couple that had come from Bangalore, I believe that's India somewhere. And they came over to the Yosemite National Park for their first expedition in America. They wanted to see, the national parks over there. They heard so much about Yosemite and all that, and they were really, really excited. And they decided to do it very primitively. So they would just hike on foot, only carry all the supplies they have is only what they could carry, small tents, minimal amounts of food. They were fishing, doing all that fun stuff for the first probably 5-6 days. And then they got into a deep old growth area of the park where it looked like people probably hadn't hiked in that area for many years, if ever. And they began to have really weird things happening to them overnight. At first it was just, sounded like something was walking around the perimeter. They would look around with their flashlight and they wouldn't see much, maybe just eye shine here and there, or maybe just like the tail end of a shadow running behind a tree. And it would progressively get worse night after night. The next couple of nights, it got closer and closer. And then one night, the night before they had their real encounter, it felt like something grabbed their tent and dragged it. And they said they could feel these hands coming up under the tent to grab it, but the fingers were like twice as long as you'd expect a human's fingers to be, and they ended in points, like they were either some sort of really sharp nails or claws. And it just grips on real tight and just yanks them. And she said this yank had to have been solid 5-6 feet just with the force. And then as they're screaming and making noise, the boyfriend jumps out with I believe some sort of knife, because they didn't have guns or anything like that, being from a different country. I believe they might have had bear spray at the most. And they jump out, they don't see anything, they start a fire and basically stay awake that whole night. That first thing in the morning, they get everything packed up. They look for any proof. They do see what looks like to be indentations in the dirt to where they were dragged, and you could see footprints. The footprints looked like regular human footprints, and they didn't look anything, any stranger. But they remembered how the hands looked the night before and how they felt, and they're like, that doesn't make any sense. So they were thinking maybe it was just somebody messing with them, playing a prank on them, something along those lines. That next night, they camp somewhere probably maybe 3-4 miles down, trying to get back to where they started to get away from all this. And that's when, in the middle of the night, something rips open their tent and starts screaming this awful sound to them. And all they could see are these antlers. And that's where the title comes from, the antlers. And all they could see is like these antlers in front of them with another deer skull. Like, have you ever seen how like deer will fight each other and then their antlers will get stuck together? That's what it looked like. And they said this deer skull that was attached to it still had the neck and all the blood coming down from it. So this blood was showering down on them. They're screaming and freaking out, and this thing's grabbing towards her boyfriend. They hit it with either the knife or spray. I can't remember exactly what they did. And this thing lunges back, and they begin running in the dark, basically towards any sense of safety, which is this fire lookout that has this light so they could see it in the distance. And they just keep running probably for the next hour or two until they get there, report what happened, and that's essentially the end of the story.
Holy cow.
Yeah, definitely a horror movie could be made off that.
Yeah, no kidding. You know what's scary about that is Jackie Harmon, who usually does the cryptid report here, back in June or July, she actually was out camping in Washington State with Lee Strauss, who'll be on after your report that we open up with hour 3. And Jackie actually got groped by a Sasquatch through the tent.
Oh, wow.
It literally, like, I've talked to her numerous times about it, and she's still a little traumatized over it. Like, it reached under the tent. They're in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around. They could hear them moving all around them and the talking and the whooping and all this kind of stuff. And they just laid in their tent. And all of a sudden, Jackie felt this hand underneath the tent grab her ankles, or grab her one ankle, then grab her calf, and then grab her thigh, and then grab her butt, and then grab her back, and then her shoulder, right up to the head. And that's when she kind of freaked out. She said she was just paralyzed in fear over it.
Oh, I would be too. That sounds terrifying.
Oh, man. So when you gave me kind of goosebumps there when you were talking about that Skinwalker story, because I'm thinking this just happened to Jackie,
Oh, yeah, and that's kind of common for Bigfoot stories. I've had 2 or 3 that I can think of that were very similar, where the Bigfoot's either, grabbing the tent similar to what this did and moving it. There's one story where I remember a Bigfoot apparently like leaned or sat on somebody in their tent. And then there's another one where they're not necessarily being groped, but definitely being touched through the tent.
Wow. Can you imagine that? Dude, earlier this year, we got stalked. We were out with a camera crew, and we got stalked by a Sasquatch in the trees. Okay? That was a frightening feeling. I could not imagine what it's like being sat on by one of these things with only I mean, the worst case scenario, it craps or farts on you at that point. That would be horrible. I make fun in that, but I could just not imagine being trapped in a tent and having this happen.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I'd react to that. I have a similar story from years ago when I was maybe like 19 years old with one of my friends. We were camping in this little creek area behind. We had these apartments and they had like woods behind it. So it wasn't like necessarily being super far out of nowhere, but it was in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I just remember somewhere around 3 or 4 a.m., something was dragging at our tent. And obviously it couldn't move us because between me and my friends, we were probably 300-400 pounds. But that was likely maybe some crazy, wild, homeless guy or something. But it always makes me think, it's like, man, this kind of stuff definitely happens. And I've experienced something similar. It wasn't probably Bigfoot or anything, but I can imagine something that's, 3-4 times the strength of a human being yanking on a tent and it's dragging you across the dirt. I could imagine that's an alarm clock that we all might need sometimes.
We talk about Bigfoot, we talk about Dogman and Skinwalkers. There's very many obscure creatures out there. Do you ever get any reports of people seeing dragons or thunderbirds or anything along those lines?
Yeah, from time to time, we definitely get some weird ones. I've been sent in stories about like phoenixes. One that I got a couple years ago that I wish I got more was one about a stikini, which is like a man owl type thing from Seminole lore, which is probably one of my favorite ones because they're similar to skinwalkers in a sense, but they're a little bit more centered around owls and whatnot. Um, but all kinds of stuff. Definitely been sent. I don't know if you'd call them dragons, but similar things to dragons for sure, like really giant lizards and no flying mythical medieval dragons that you'd expect, but definitely similar things. And just like wild things like bunyips, and definitely have been sent some Thunderbird stuff, a couple of those over the years. But yeah, there's definitely some obscure ones that come from random places. Like I said, like Alaska earlier and Canada for sure. And I get some from South America all the time that are a bit harder to necessarily share because it's usually in Spanish. So I'm relying on Google Translate.
Do you believe all the creatures that people report? Because I'll tell you, I think people are seeing something. Okay. But if I take the Thunderbird, and I've said this many a time on the show, if I take the Thunderbird, I got a real hard time with that one because the way I look at it, we should have, or if anything, that should be the one we should be able to spot because those bird droppings from a 40-foot crow, okay, 40-foot long crow or eagle or whatever you want to call it, that is going to paint some cars or some trees, man. We
Yeah,
don't.
that's one that I've always thought about too, is like if the Thunderbird is real, they have to be very, very rare, right? They have to be very few and far in between for it to be hidden. Then you hear like the Raptors and like Arizona and stuff like that too. So like I feel like there's some things being seen, right? And sometimes I lean more in that, power of belief thing again, and we're starting to maybe lean into like the realm of tulpas and maybe willing something into existence.
Or if I could throw this at you, what about just people seeing a break in time where they actually maybe go back in time where these were real and prevalent?
That's
Like,
definitely a possibility. I mean, with all the weird things that we do on this planet, CERN and all these things, we could be opening up things and seeing, a look in the past, some interdimensional portal opening up. I don't know how this works, but I think that's actually a really possible and plausible thing that could be happening.
man, Swamp Dweller is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We got about 7 minutes before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Swamp, with everything that you have covered, you talked about liking Native American folklore. There is so much of it. What is maybe some of the creatures that you love covering or hear stories about, whether it's puckwedgies or little people? Because the little people I know are very traditional around here as trick. Have you ever had any people write up and maybe you could share a story about little people?
I've definitely been sent little people stories. It's been a minute. Um, and they definitely like vary with how they look, the descriptions people give. And I could probably name probably like every single First Nations group has a story about little people in one sense or the other. Um, the only one that really sticks out in the top of my mind is one a old friend shared with me years and years ago from Oklahoma. Not quite sure where, but he grew up around a very popular and prevalent medicine man of the time. And I remember he said this medicine man would come over to his grandma's garden quite often and would either pray or give offerings to something. And he never really knew what it was and never really understood what was going on until one day when he was looking outside his window, he was watching the medicine man come and give his offering. When he left, he noticed what looked like this miniature person come out from under the bushes and come grab whatever food or treat was left behind and walk back into the bushes. And, it's a very basic, similar, very, to the point story, but that's one of the ones that stick to my head because it's just like such a weird. I would never expect it coming from the guy who shared the story, very no nonsense, very, tough military guy. And he's never had any sort of paranormal experience in his life, but this is the one story where he's like, I just don't know what that was. And it was this little person. And, Oklahoma is definitely a place where a lot of those stories, are said to happen. And there's a lot of natives there. So I kind of put a lot of credence into that one. But I don't have anything necessarily terrifying with them. Maybe some Pugwidgee stories, if that counts, but normally just super tricksterish, always messing with people from the trees, sometimes getting a little dangerous, almost pushing people off ledges, stuff like that.
What do you think little people are? Do you think they're just miniature versions of us? Do you think they're more of a sprite or fairy realm type of creature?
Honestly, I've never really given a lot of thought to like what they are. From what I understand, like maybe some sort of sprite or fae type of creature. It seems like they definitely do slip into dimensions, or from one spot to another. Like they almost can kind of jump between realms, if you will. But I feel like they would probably fall into that, like what fae world maybe is what they're called, right. Gnomes, stuff like that. Maybe I guess that's where I would probably put my belief into.
Yeah, I think so too, but I just don't want to mess with them.
Oh yeah, I'm scared of them.
I do have to hit you up on one though, a little bit similar topic. All right, and that would be garden gnomes. Do you ever get any stories about garden gnomes coming to life?
I'm gonna think hard on that one. I don't think so. Maybe if anything, some sort of possession story potentially, but I can't think of any actual like garden gnome sightings outside of maybe like them being related to the little people stories.
I was actually told by researcher David Weatherly. He's an author. He called me up privately one day and he says, "You and I need to actually have a little talk, Dave." And I said, "What's going on?" Because I thought he was about to give me crap for something, right? And he says to me, "You need to stop putting the energy out there about that, how much you don't like or are creeped out by the garden gnomes." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because they will find you and they will not be very happy. They are vengeful little creatures. And you have to be positive around them. You can't insult them. You can't, be ridicule them or anything like that." He goes, "I just really don't want anything to happen to you." I said, You're actually serious right now?" He goes, "Dave, I'm deadpan serious." He had an absolute fear of garden gnomes coming to life and seeking revenge on people such as I was, making fun of them and putting my fear out, man.
That's reasonable. I don't like gnomes either, so I see one, I kind of just want to smash it,
Yeah, I'm not taking that chance. Like I got a couple gnomes in here,
Oh, you're inviting them. You got like totems.
I am one with the gnomes now, man. I am totally one with the gnomes because I am not taking that chance. I had to build that relationship, man.
Hopefully that means they'll be there for you in the battles to come.
Right. Yes, when the zombie apocalypse happens, I'm very much hoping the gnomes come back and protect the living daylights out of me and my family, man.
I can only hope, Dave.
I know you're shaking your head on that. We got about 45 seconds to go here before we got to go to break. One of the topics I love, and we're going to get into this in the next half hour, is you have a great collection of stories from park rangers.
Yes.
They are people who've seen a lot of incredible stuff. 20 seconds or less. Why do you love doing these stories?
I have just always had an affinity for my local state and national parks. Florida's just filled with them, and I've always wanted to do the job myself, done a few, I guess, part-time jobs myself, but I never really did it full-time, so I've just always had this crazy interest in it, and they see some crazy stuff out there.
Well, we're going to get into that here when we return with you, because I know you got some creepy stories from UFO encounters, alien encounters, strange people, like zombie-like people going through parks. And dude, I've heard dozens of them from you, because it's one of the sections I listen to on Swamp Dweller, the YouTube channel. Make sure you go hit subscribe to Swamp Dweller's YouTube channel. It's all free, and you literally get hundreds of stories, thousands of stories for free. We'll be right back. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, my man, we are clear.
Awesome.
And we got about 6 minutes here. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to put you back in the green room, and we'll be right back, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you, Road Flare. Appreciate you. Hi, sweet Robbie G. Looking good, buddy. Mac Geek, how you doing? Good to see you guys. I'll be right back, everybody. All right, I am back. Swamp Dweller is here. No, Dave didn't get abducted by aliens. No, never. Never. I've never been abducted by aliens. Yeah, right. Kevin, how you doing? Good to see you. Who else has jumped in here? Sweet Robbie G. Much love to you, brother. Best weekend host I've ever had. Sweet Robbie G. If you aren't tuning into him on the weekends, you are missing the frick out. All right. Big thank you tonight so far to Tim, Richard, ×2, T-Bone, Simon, Jojo, and Road Flare for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support, everybody. It's a great way to support our show. And a big thank you to everybody who's picked up some swag from our store recently. We do not have ugly swag, and you look so good in it. You really do. Here we go. It is time for hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. We always appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. We're dedicating this one to our guest, Swampy. Swampy is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. The man with over 300,000 subscribers on YouTube, he is a storyteller extraordinaire of all things weird and strange. Swamp Dweller is his name and the name of the channel. And I highly suggest, if you want to get spooked out, you go hit subscribe, because he has thousands of stories right there waiting for you to listen to. Swamp Dweller, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
Glad to be here with you, Dave.
Right before the break, I asked you about park rangers. You have got dozens upon dozens of stories, freaky stories of people who have claimed to be park rangers and have told you the most insane stories, from everything from zombies to UFOs to skinwalkers to wendigos and every Bigfoot and Dogman in between. What makes these park rangers so special to get stories from?
I just think it's so interesting because these are the people a lot of the times, and not every state park, but a lot of these state parks are super rural, super out there, especially throughout the South. There's so many that are just, you would never even know it's a state park when you're driving on the highway because you're going through trees. So you just assume it's just more trees. And there are some crazy things out there, whether it be remnants of, Native Americans past, Civil War past, just people exploring, or all kinds of strange creatures and just, everything in between, like you mentioned a second ago. And I just think that these people who spend so much time out there have a ton of training, and especially ones that have done this for decades, on end, have a little bit more validity, at least in the sense of they're not going to mistake a bear as easily, or a deer jumping over something as easily as somebody say like one of us who spend most of our time inside, or in a city or town type element. If you don't go outside as much, or are out in the woods with all the creatures that are around your local area, you might not be as, confident or familiar with what's happening around you. So I just feel like the validity they have and the knowledge they have of their particular areas is just so valuable. And usually the stories reflect that they're usually based in some sort of reality. Now, there can be some interesting, encounters, zombies, or these, it seems pretty common, like these will-o-wisp type creatures. But I think they all have very valuable insight. And I think a lot of them are being very truthful.
share with us a story that you've received from a park ranger that just really in our modern reality just should not exist or just doesn't make sense.
There's one story that sticks out with me a lot, and it's not I guess it's a park ranger who also volunteered to do fire watch in California. And there's just something about this particular story that just sticks with me because of the description of these little creatures. And he would describe them as almost like tree stump looking creatures. So you wouldn't even notice them that they're real at first, but they would only show up at night. And then when they would get close enough to touch, they would turn red, almost as if they were like balls of flames. And this would catch a lot of brush on fire, even, burn trees, such like that. And he was claiming that these creatures are a big reason to why there are so many wildfires and whatnot going on in California. And it just sticks out to me because the person has so much conviction. I had a couple of phone calls with them just because at first I was like, I don't know, this is a really good story, but it sounds kind of crazy. And the more I talked with the guy, he just seemed so, he seemed so with it. He seemed so in reality. It wasn't like, he was shooken up about the encounter, but he wasn't striking me as somebody who was looking for a couple views or a good laugh, and that it just doesn't make any sense to me that a tree stump type creature could turn into a ball of flames, and that shouldn't be a thing. But I've seen some crazy things on these chemist videos to where somebody drops a little bit of chemicals into this water and it explodes or sets something on fire. So to me, it kind of seems like it could be true, but it just doesn't seem like it fits in our reality.
Wow. What about the idea that a lot of these parks have missing people? We've heard David Paulides talk about it. We've heard Steve Stockton talk about these people who just seem to vanish into thin air. I know you've covered it numerous times on your show or on your channel, Swamp Dweller. What is it about missing people that just gets to you?
Particularly the ones in state parks get to me just because there's no real database to keep track of it, at least not publicly. And oftentimes it just seems like these people are failed when it comes to looking for them. Whether, have political ties, supernatural ties, there are so many stories to where you just hear, oh, he was there and then he was gone. And we all go out and search with hundreds of people, for days to weeks on ends, and we never find a single thing. And they scour these areas up and down, helicopters, scent dogs, everything in between. And it just seems to me that can't be, that's not humanly possible. There's no way you can just disappear with that much manpower behind you. And a lot of the times it just feels like we're not getting the full picture. A good example is Paul Fugate, who was a park ranger himself, who went missing under very, very mysterious circumstances where, unfortunately, the park ranger service was kind of proven to have covered up some things they shouldn't have covered up or didn't look into some things they should have looked into. So I think it's just a mix of all these strange and anomalous things that go into it, whether it be human or supernatural, that just really grind my gears in a weird way, because it just makes me want to, get that story out there more and try to get more information.
Yeah, I have noticed that too. And according to many people who've looked into this, the maps that, and I don't know if you've looked into this, maybe you have. The maps, when you overlay the national state parks of the United States with the tunnels that seem to be under, they seem to overlap each other. Have you ever looked at that?
Yeah, that's actually on my Instagram. I've had a couple of posts talking about that, to where the cave systems line up almost exactly to all the, clusters of missing people. And I think that's a large thing. There's a very popular mystery on YouTube about this caver who went and found this M cave. And it's got UFO connections, government connections, all kinds of weird stuff and theories out there. But he goes to this cave and just disappears. Nobody ever sees him ever again. And I think that that there's more relevance to that connection than a lot of people might think.
Do you think the government knows a lot about this? I know we're getting more into conspiracy theory here, But when it comes to these missing people, and that there are no records of how many people vanish per year or anything along those lines, for some reason they don't keep statistics. Do you think the government or agencies know what's going on, in your opinion?
Entirely. I mean, I don't think, I think it's definitely a case by case basis. I don't think the whole thing is an overlapping conspiracy per se, but I do think on quite a few cases they know what's going on, because I think in reality a large number of these are going to turn out to be some sort of natural or human intervention. But there are definitely a number of them that are very strange, definitely have a lot of anomalous and weird circumstances around it that, for whatever reason, the powers that be kind of just want you to forget about.
It's kind of hard to forget when somebody goes missing.
Exactly. And it's just very strange. Happens more often than not.
Why do you think these certain areas, whether it's Yellowstone National Park or places like that, have these continuous anomalies going on that just seem to take people?
See, I'm not sure about that one. I think areas like Yosemite and Yellowstone, potentially there's just so much energy. You have, what, Mount St. Helens, and you have all kinds of very dark history in Yosemite, especially when it came to, coming out here to the West and, fighting those dastardly natives. And I think that could be a part of it. And it's just such a large swath of land, to where even if somebody said tripped and fell into a cave, it'd be very unlikely you ever find him. It's like a needle in a haystack. So I think it's just one of those things to where it's like a breeding ground of everything and everything and anything altogether.
What do you think is actually going on? Do you think there are monsters there, or do you think it's feral people? Do you think it's aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, or just the creatures that are normally in forested areas like that, whether it's wolf packs or bears or mountain lions?
I think it's going to be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I think my answer is going to be kind of boring on that one. But I do think there are a large number of these things that you could attest, potentially put, say, Bigfoot or UFO type things. And then on the other hand, there's going to be that percentage that's, of course, the natural, somebody got hurt, wolves took them out, whatever. I'm not necessarily sure I believe that, there are packs of wolves or anything like that, hunting down people outright. But there have been weirder things going on, and with less and less prey being available, you never know. Maybe they are going to come after us. But it just seems like the details that a lot of these kind of stray into that supernatural realm a lot more often than I even care to admit personally. And that's why I kind of am leaning more towards like maybe there is some sort of, ET connection there.
You a big alien guy? Big UFO guy?
Typically, no. I do believe, I think we would be, it's a very interesting mindset to think that we're the only living thing in the entire cosmos. I don't know where I lean. I've always been more of that like kind of middleman thing on there. I've never really fallen down the UFO rabbit hole per se, but I've never been opposed to it either.
With the idea that, getting back to the missing parks and UFOs and things like that, what about portals? What about, people jumping into different dimensions? Do you think this is possible too, and that's what's happening with a lot of these people?
100%. I think, and this probably leans into my thoughts on aliens as well, is I think if any of that stuff makes sense, interdimensional type portals, type traveling, that type stuff makes way more sense than, say, somebody coming from 8 gazillion light years away or whatever. So yeah, I believe 100% just with the stories that I've been, I've looked into, just, documentaries I've seen myself, and just kind of what I've experienced myself. I think 100% there could be some sort of, there could be some sort of portal, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Do you get a lot of portal stories?
Yeah, all the time. That's why I actually kind of fall into that a little bit more belief wise, just because there's so many people from all over the world that have sent me stories that have no real reason to make this up, and it's a very consistent thing that I see on a day-to-day basis. It's not like, oh, I get like one story every so often on this. It's probably like one out of every 20 to 25 stories easily.
And what are people seeing?
Sometimes it's like, loved ones or them. Sometimes it's like themselves. Sometimes, they're seeing Bigfoot or some sort of creature similar to that jumping through it. At first it was a lot of dogmen coming in and out. And that's why, people weren't really seeing them allegedly. And, I've seen stories where people were talking about, UFOs coming in and out, like they were like basically turning invisible, but I think that's them going into a portal. And just stuff like that. Just anything and everything. But one of the most common ones is people seeing either themselves in like a different reality almost, or almost like an opening of the veil is happening and they're seeing their passed on loved ones in a sense.
Wow. Give us a story about that. That sounds incredible.
There's actually one in a recent video. Might not even be out yet, but there was this woman. She had a couple near-death experiences. One was from a very severe car crash, and then only a couple of months later, as she was on the mend, she got into another pretty severe car crash. And both times they were so severe to where she was rushed to ER and all that. And she said after she got out of the hospital for the second time, she started having these weird like visions. Like it would be like when she would focus on something for too long, it would almost be like a clear, almost opaque type, opening would like an eye, almost like a cat's eye is what she described it as, would like open up in front of her for a split second, and she would get a look at something that she didn't recognize. And it was a room. She said she kept seeing a room, but it wasn't like, a room that we would know or recognize today with our type of furniture. It was just like this very clean, almost like, platinum steel looking room. And she would just keep seeing it, but only for glimpses at a time. And then she would start dreaming about it a lot. And she would have these dreams to where she is walking up to this opening, if you will, and going through it. And when she would go through it, she would feel this weird peace come over her. And like, this is where she was meant to be, but she couldn't explain why. She would never see anybody. She would never see anything, but it would just be a feeling that would come over her. And she said she kept having this for about 6 months until she was kind of back to normal. And, her CTE and all the scans were coming back normal and stuff. And then it just went away. But she has no idea how to explain it more than that it was a portal or some sort of doorway into a healing chamber to help her get better. Because she said she wasn't supposed to get better for, year and a half, 2 years is what they were projecting. And she got better in 6 months.
Wow. Have you had people report to you about maybe they're out for a hike and maybe it's a mother-daughter or a father-son or father-daughter, whatever the two people, and one disappears, but the other one, they're looking in the place where they disappeared, and the other one is vanished for like a few hours, but then comes back and says, I was calling for you. Why didn't you hear me? Why didn't you answer me? I was watching you and I was trying to get to you, but I couldn't get to you. Have you ever had any stories like that?
Yeah, in one of my early Lost in the Woods episodes, there was a story of a gentleman and his father going hunting, and I believe his uncle might have been with him too. He was walking with his uncle because his dad liked to go back by himself and be in this blind. So him and his uncle were walking to a ridge where then they would split up and go and meet up on the other side of the ridge where they would, one would go one way, he would go the other. And as he was about to turn and, walk away, he noticed that his uncle just disappeared in front of his eyes. Like there was a little bit of, like a little bit of fog, whatever. It wasn't thick though. You could still see him probably for good 500,000 feet ahead of him. And he said he took 2-3 steps and it was like he just disappeared. And then all day when he got back, probably like 3-4 hours later, he got back to that point where they were supposed to meet. He wasn't there. He got worried after about 30-45 minutes. So he calls his dad. His dad comes and meets him, and they walk around that whole ridge several times and never find him, screaming his name, yelling out for him. They see deer running out. They see all kinds of stuff, but they don't see any footprints or anything else. When they get back to the truck, the uncle walks up a couple minutes later and says, "Hey, where were you guys? I was yelling for you, just like you mentioned." And the whole time he claims that he was just sitting there in his normal spot at the ridge, just hanging out, looking for deer, not seeing anything. And that whole time, these two are walking around allegedly where he was sitting and screaming his name, and he had never heard it or saw them or anything. I just don't know how to explain those types of stories, honestly.
Swamp, what do you think it is? What do you think is causing all of this? Is it
I,
government? Is it Earth mysteries? What do you think it is?
I want to say it's the mysteries of life. I think that our world's a lot more anomalous than, science gives it credit for. And I think, just the more you study everything around you, again, whether it be religion, just people, whatever, there's so much more than meets the eye almost every single time. And I've started to even notice that, when it comes to true crime and other stuff like that, that there's always more than meets the eye. And I think that that's what's going on here. There's a bunch of information that we have yet to figure out. And I think until we get that information given to us, because maybe people up in the government already know, but I think there's a lot more high strangeness in the world that's a lot more normal than we realize.
I would give you that one. I would totally agree with you on that regarding just what is happening. You just look at the UFO front and all the politics that are starting around that entire story the last number of years. I mean, if you're dense enough where you cannot see the cover up happening, then I feel sorry for you. But I mean, I'm not saying you in general. I'm just saying the population in general, they're swampy. So, but I do believe there is a major cover up going on. We got just over 90 seconds here before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. You love Bigfoot. You love Bigfoot. You do get a lot of stories on Bigfoot. One thing that we never really see about Bigfoot is Bigfoot attacking people. We've seen them curious. We've seen them get up close and personal. Heard them steal pies off of, kitchen windowsills. But have you ever had a story about someone who got attacked by a Bigfoot?
Oh yeah, tons of stories of people being chased off, camps being ravaged, and I think maybe even quite a few people, getting into a little bit of a tussle with one. But more often than not, the fights I'm seeing with, or altercations I'm seeing with Bigfoot, a lot of times it seems like Bigfoot is coming to kind of save the day.
In what regard?
There's a popular Dogman story on my channel where Dogman's attacking a couple who are camping, and a presumably female mother Bigfoot comes out and beats up and scares off this Dogman, allegedly.
Really?
And that seems to be somewhat common.
Now, I have heard stories of Bigfoot protecting people from bears and mountain lions, but never against a Dogman.
From what I've learned in my early days of looking into this stuff, it seems like Dogman and Bigfoot almost are adversaries in a sense. Like, when I first heard about Dogman, a lot of squatchers at the time didn't want to really, recognize that it was a thing. So they would call them dog-faced boogers, or, they thought it was just a variant of Bigfoot, call them like anti-Bigfoot almost. So I think that there's a very yin and yang relationship going on there.
Well, when we come back, we got another half hour of Swamp Dweller on Spaced Out Radio. Second half of the show coming up right after this. With your host, Dave Scott. Sorry about that. I totally forgot to take my microphone off mute when I was coughing. Hold on, now I forgot to take you off mute.
Oh no.
No, it's late. It's during the week, man. Oh,
It's Tuesday. It's one of those. No, it's Wednesday for me now. Shoot.
I'm taking day off tomorrow for my daytime job. Told the boss yesterday, I'm like, dude, I need a day off in the forest. Going out in the forest. Don't call me. He's like, yeah, good enough.
Feel that.
Oh yeah. It'll be fun. It shall be fun.
There's so many strange things. Just like going through quick comments on these park ranger ones. A lot of people always mention the strange lights people see out there. And that's something I've never really had an answer for either. You're in the middle of the woods, no lights or electricity for miles, and there's just red blinking lights.
Dude, in our Sasquatch spot that we have up here, we get orbs like anything, man. We get orbs like it is the weirdest thing where we will, it's like when the orbs show up, then the strangeness of Sasquatch, all of a sudden something is going to happen. So we're always watching the trees for these, blue, white, yellow, orange, red orbs that seem to just absolutely spark up.
It's so interesting to me. I've noticed that in a lot of stories too, where there's this orbs a lot around, the Sasquatch sightings and whatnot. And just to preface for Brown Dwarf here, my apologies for saying squatchers. I'm definitely 10 years behind on my wording here.
No worries, my man. No worries. Walter wants to know Bigfoot versus Dogman. Who do you think wins?
Most of the time, it is the Bigfoot. I just think that Bigfoot has a bit more upper body strength, if you will, going on there. They have more. I think they have more of an advantage. And Bigfoot has opposables. I think that's the big thing here. There's the story that I'm talking about in particular. Bigfoot literally picks up a big old log and just whacks Dogman with it, and it's just like, sheesh. It's like, all right, well. But I think, given the right circumstances, depending on, what's going on, I think Dogman could very easily win that fight as well. I mean, their claws, their teeth, they've definitely got the tools to do so.
Oh no, I'm going Bigfoot all the way, man. I think it happens with a an elbow off a nice Douglas fir tree. Okay. And pinning them for the 3 count. Maybe even get a 5 count out of it. I'm good with that. I think it happens that way.
I'd like to think the good guy wins.
I mean, Dogman just seems like an angry house cat.
He just seems rude. I don't think he'd be a nice guy.
No. There's an area east of me that allegedly has Dogman in that area. And I refuse to go over there. They just, the idea of Dogman just scares the hell out of me. I don't know why. It scares the daylights out of me. I mean, I will go into the forest looking for Bigfoot every day if I could. But to go into a Dogman territory, I just cannot do that. It scares me too much.
And some of my when I first got into this, I did do some actual, in the boots on the ground exploring, as they'd say. And I will say, like, I believe I've been in the presence of one in the woods one time, and the feeling is something that I can't quite describe. It almost like it commands your attention. Like, my attention was immediately ripped to this thing, and you could just feel this like almost slow motion moment to where like your heart's pounding in your ears and you're just like, oh no, like this is either going to be, where I get my, absolute daylights knocked out, or I run and get to live and tell the tale. And it was pretty much that simple and fast, but it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, this is a feeling to where I understand now, where people are talking about to where like, oh, I was frozen in fear.
Right. All right, buddy. We are coming back here in about 35 seconds. Thank you tonight to Road Flare, JoJo, Simon, Tim, Richard, ×2, and T-Bone, my man, for the great super chats. Really appreciate the love. And Simon, once again, so thank you very much, my man. Very much appreciate the love. And don't forget, our store is open 24 hours a day at spacedoutradio.com. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So go get your stuff today. Here we go. Here comes the second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. We got the Swamp Dweller until the top of the hour talking high strangeness stories, and I know you'll love them. I promise you will. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for being here tonight with us. And I want to remind all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We got the Swamp Dweller here for another half an hour. We got him till the top where we are going over spooky things. And I encourage each and every one of you to head on over to his YouTube channel, which is called Swamp Dweller. Hit subscribe. And if you want some real crazy, weird, spooky stories, this is the man who's going to tell the story all about it. Swampy, thank you so much for being here again, my man.
Thanks for having me. It's always a great time.
We were talking a little bit of Bigfoot right before the break, and you think that Bigfoot could take out Dogman?
I do. I believe that Bigfoot is more than capable.
What do you think the finishing move is?
It's either going to be a great people's elbow or probably a solid what is it, the Hulk Hogan leg drop?
I'm thinking Iron Sheik camel clutch.
Wise choice.
Yeah, and if it's a tag team match, we got to go back to like the Hart Foundation with Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, where Neidhart catches the guy on the ropes, picks him up, and then Bret the Hitman comes running off the ropes with the flying clothesline.
Ooh.
Take off a Dogman head pretty easily, I think, if you're a Bigfoot.
Oh, I agree.
I'm going with that. Totally going with that. True crime. You cover a lot of true crime on your channel, Swamp Dweller. What is it about true crime that really catches your attention?
I'm just a crime junkie, as I'm sure many other people are. It's definitely one of those morbid fascinations I have, and it mainly like the psychology behind a lot of it. I love watching the interrogations and what those breakdowns and court videos, and I just really have like this weird soft spot for finding stories and cases that I feel like people don't really know about as often most of the time. And a lot of the times those stories get swept under the rugs, and those victims and those families don't really get their fair shot at telling their story. So when I started doing true crime, it was more of just, I want to reach out to these, families that might not have gotten a fair shake, whether the investigation was, botched or whatever, and there's just no real coverage about it. I want to be able to get in contact with them, get their story, and, make some cohesive coverage that might help, run up some tips one day. And doing that, we did get some tips ran up for a case from 1962, and it helped solve it after quite some time. Unfortunately, it's one of those cases to where they'll never find the guy the DNA linked to because it's been so long, but he's likely passed on anyway. But it's one of those things to where a YouTube video actually did do some good for the world.
It really shows the uglier side of humanity, doesn't it? Do you find that you get a little bit colder or harder when you are pushing these stories through?
I think I've noticed the opposite. I think I used to be a lot more shut off to these types of things because it was just a documentary on Netflix or, something like that. But when I started actually talking to the families and, doing my own deep dives and research, I've noticed it made me become a much more empathetic person. I've noticed myself, my heartstrings being pulled. I've noticed, a tear down the cheek sometimes, I've become a lot more empathetic and a lot more of a sympathetic human being because of the crime stuff, I'd say.
What story really impacted you?
Definitely the story I was just talking about from the 1960s, Margaret Peggy Beck. She was a 16-year-old girl. Her last day at a Boy Scout and Girl Scout camp, just a scout camp in general. She was found dead in the morning, zip tied, panties ripped, stuff like that, and they claimed that it was a natural death. And that just didn't sit right with me. I read it randomly online, and then I just kept having weird dreams about it. It was one of those moments to where that empathetic side of me really awoken, I would say. And that next morning, I got up, I did all the research I could, contacted the family, got every detail I could about it, and we found every possible person who could have been involved. Explained why they could have been involved, where there was skin under her fingernails from where she was defending herself. So we were like, you need to be testing that. I'm sure you still have it in evidence somewhere, which they did. And, they tested it and we were able to get a name. But like I said, unfortunately, it was, so many years removed that at that point it didn't really matter.
Holy cow. Wow. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing right there. I have dealt in my years of journalism with some pretty heinous crimes on that, whether it involves people or animals or whatever it could be. Unfortunately, some of these stories do have to be covered. Do you look at a lot of these true crime stories as crimes of passion, crimes of anger? Or just crimes of insanity? Where do you choose them from?
Each story is definitely gonna be different. Like the Keith Warren one, that one I had to cover because it was just unjust. It was clearly just racially motivated at a time where that was a very common thing, and they didn't get a fair investigation, and I just felt like that was not right, and that made me want to cover that one. And like these recent case like with Wade Wilson and stuff like that, just this guy's a evil manipulative human being to where I just was fascinated by how this person worked, and I needed to have an outlet to be able to explain all this knowledge I took in. I think just each case has its own reasoning for me, and it always just comes down to what can I use this to either help somebody with or maybe educate somebody with, because the crime stuff for me is just more of a passion thing more than it is about is this going to get views or not. And I think it's just like I said, each case is just going to have like something that sticks out to me and that's going to nag at me, and if I don't have an outlet like a video to explain it and share it, it's going to probably just bother me.
As it should. It should bother every one of us. And I think it's important the way you are actually bringing a lot of these stories to light. I give you great respect for that, my man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's definitely, like I said, it's definitely not a popular thing on the channel, but it's just one of those things to where I have a platform and I want to do some good with it if I can.
You also deal a lot in horror stories. When I think horror stories, I think of movies with characters like Jason or Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger. What kind of horror stories are you dealing with?
A lot of them are based off of just like my interest in the channel's interest. So we've done some fun horror stories based around like Akigahara, the Suicide Forest, stuff like that. A couple based down in like South America. I like to take regions like the Amazon and stuff like that to where there's so much mystery and so many cool things that we discover in those places all the time. Some tragic and some just absolutely beautiful and anomalous, like cities that we didn't know were there for hundreds of years and stuff like that. And there's just nothing really that you can do in the sense of documentary form sometimes. So I'm just like, how about we just make a very fun and very scary, in-depth story about those types of topics? And a lot of the times I feel like if we really tried hard enough, we could potentially get these pushed into like short films or something.
Oh, that's just creepy, man. That suicide forest in Japan, that's just a crazy story right there, man. What do you think is going on there?
I think for the most part, a lot of that's tradition. You know, I just think it's been a place that, you know, for as long as most of these people have been alive, they've known this is where you come to, unfortunately, do those types of things. But from a lot of interesting things I've seen, I think there's definitely some sort of energy there. I mean, the immense sorrow, all the tragedy that's gone on there, definitely some Yakuza activity over the years. It was definitely a dumping ground for a lot of, you know, organized crime and stuff like that. And who knows, you know, how many of those bodies are murder victims instead of suicide victims, etc. I think there's a dark energy there. I think energy is a very real thing that all of us could acknowledge. And I think if you do enough very terrible, very awful things in one area, it's gonna definitely leave some sort of imprint.
How much do you believe in tulpas?
Um, I'd probably say I'm a pretty strong believer in tulpas, just from my own experience and from, you know, just belief in general. I think belief is a very, 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 very powerful thing. It's used to manipulate millions of people around the world every single day. So I think the power of belief is a lot more understated than I think any of us want to admit.
Do you think that a lot of these creatures that you have covered over the years are the result of tulpa creations by people? I mean, you think of Hat Man or Siren Head or Bloody Mary or whatever that creature or cryptid may be.
Yeah, for sure. I think just in my own experience, I think the stress or the fear of something enough can definitely manifest it to be something that you're seeing it a little bit more commonly, especially something like Hat Man or whatnot. But I also acknowledge on the other end, and also kind of believe this as well, which is why I kind of stay in that skeptic realm, is that these things could just be attracted to stress. You know, it could just be entities that exist that are attracted to these energies. Um, but I think, you know, again, if we're just gonna be completely honest and keep going middle of the ground like I typically do, I think it's a mix of both.
Do you think then that it's our own imaginations and the energies that we have created have manifested these scary creatures?
Some of them, I think some of them, because there are definitely stories where these creatures seem to be more of a manifestation of something that a person who is going through high stress or high anxiety or high sadness, depression, whatever, might conjure up. Um, But again, so many of these stories have creatures that seemingly are the same, like the Hat Man, stuff like that. So that's where it kind of gets hard to think, well, is this a tulpa? Because if it is a tulpa or a manifestation of your belief, why do they all kind of look the same? It just seems a little too consistent. I feel like it would be a little bit more personalized, but you know, I could just be wrong in that belief.
I don't think you are. I don't think you're far off on that. I think people, because we really don't know the strength of our energy, I think people don't know the power of manifestation. I think that's a big one for us.
I think it is too. I mean, you see it in Skinwalkers all the time. They say, "Don't talk about it. Don't say the name." You know, same thing with say Wendigo and a lot of other creatures. A lot of times in these native stories, you're seeing and hearing of them say, "We just don't speak about it. It's taboo." And if you break that taboo, you invite that evil upon you. And I think that that is kind of where that stems from a bit.
Do you think there's a lot more evil out there than what we expect?
Yeah, I think so. Um, I don't know, you know, where it comes from or, you know, if it originates with human beings or whatnot, but we have seen evil humans and, you know, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but we've probably seen some evil animals in our day. So I think whether it be a spiritual thing or just a habitual thing, I think evil is all around us.
In a human created or like a religious created human or human a religious created story of evil?
Maybe maybe more human, but I think the religion aspect falls into the human thing as maybe I'll get some flack for this, but religion's kind of falls into a human created type thing, right? So I think it's all one and the same at the end of the day. I think we're just telling the same story in different ways, different words, if you will.
You get a lot of responses from people who are, the life bone of production, which is truckers. And I think truckers see a lot of high strangeness out on the roads and the highways around not only the United States, but across North America and the world in delivering product, driving at night or early in the morning, seeing lights or shadow people or ghosts or whatever. Do you have a favorite trucker story that's been reported to you?
Oh yeah. The first time I ever wanted to do a trucker video was because I got this one very strange story, and it's not scary in the slightest, more than it is just like such a head scratcher and almost leaves you feeling good. There was this trucker who stopped. He was somewhere on a mountain pass, somewhere either in the Midwest, West Coast, somewhere around there, and he noticed there was something laying on the ground, seemingly injured, and it looked like it was a dead deer or something like that. So he stops his truck, gets out, and looks at it because he's going to have to move it out of the way so he can get by. He notices that there is this creature hiding off in the bushes just off the road. And he noticed it's maybe like 3.5, 4 feet tall. And the best thing he can describe it as was like a gorilla if it was a midget. And he assumed it was some sort of juvenile creature. His best thing was he was saying it was definitely Bigfoot at the time. His description of it was definitely a little bit odd, but Bigfoot is what I kind of gathered from it. And after, I can't exactly remember what happened after that, but after some time, this little Bigfoot was trying to get him to come into the gully because apparently the mother Bigfoot had gotten stuck or somehow, I guess, their foot or ankle or something onto the garter of the side rail garter that keeps the trucks and cars from falling off. So I guess from what I understand is he helps this thing get its foot unstuck, and as gratitude, it repays him by moving the deer's body and stroking his beard ever so softly and apparently thanking him for the help. And then he sees them walk off into the mountains, and he just keeps driving. And it's not a scary story. It's not a, particularly terrifying encounter at all, but it's one of those stories that I've always thought about. It's just like, what would life be like if we were just more like we just coexisted more with the animals and the creatures around us, right? If we coexisted in a way to where we just kind of helped all of our neighbors, regardless if they were human being or animals or not, what would the world be like? Would it be more like a Futurama episode, or would it still be the same?
Well, that's the big one right there. What would it be? And why would it be there? We got about 6 minutes to go here with you. A swamp dweller is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I think people like truckers are some of the best eyewitnesses that we can have. I mean, much like pilots who are trained observers, truckers just have to be as aware, if not more, because there's more danger for them on the roads, from aggressive drivers to road rage to animals to absolutely everything. You mentioned that one trucker story, but have you ever had a trucker talk about maybe missing time after seeing UFOs or anything?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of UFO stories that to where they're like, oh, I was following this UFO for 30 minutes, but when I looked down, it had been like 3 hours, and they were in like some random spot that they shouldn't be, and dispatchers are calling in, why are you still driving, etc. But one that sticks out a lot is I hear this all the time about the black dog. And there was this one story that was sent in to where this guy had seen it once, and usually that means you should pull over and sleep because if you ignored that, it's bad stuff was going to happen. He ignores it. He sees it again, and the black dog, disappears, and he says, screw it, I'm going to keep going. And he keeps going down these mile markers, and progressively he keeps seeing it more and more, and it gets closer and closer to the truck. And by the time it's about to jump out in front of him, like he's going to hit it, and he swerves, he he crashes into a tree and all that fun stuff. And when he notices, it had only been like 2 or 3 miles, at least he thought it was, but apparently it had been 20 or 30 that he had gone, and he had no idea, and he had done it within a matter of minutes, regardless, like, then it would be like, say, 25, 35, 45 minutes that it normally would have taken. So it's not as big of a disparity time-wise as some of the UFO ones, but to me, it's super interesting to see stories like that because it is tied to being tired, overly tired, and hallucinating. And on top of that, it could just be something like an omen as well, which I'm a big believer of omens.
Why do you believe in the omen?
Just because my grandmother was big into that type of stuff when I was growing up, and she would always point out weird things like crows or ravens when, you know, they would sit in a murder or a group, if you will. And she would always point out gators. There would always be a weird thing to where we would hang out and there would be like a lone gator that would always just pop up, like without fail. Almost any time we'd come to this park and we sit down at this bench, there would be always one gator that would just come out of the water and just sit there and look at us the whole time, probably like 30, 40 feet away on the little gravel beach little area that they'd pull up when we come out of the water on. And she would always just say, you know, that if you disrespect nature, nature will disrespect you. And we would always just sit there and look at this gator that would pop out. And I just always felt like it was something like almost magical about it. Cause like I said, without fail, every single time it would be there. She never fed it, nothing like that. So that's why I always thought it was one of those things. And premonitions and omens and stuff that kind of connects with that type of thing just always, for whatever reason, just stuck out with me. And I just always look out for certain types of like dragonflies after people pass away and stuff like that.
What do you think then about superstition?
I think superstition falls within reason, you know, like if it makes sense and there's something to it, then I'm probably for it. So like I'm just always going to be that hard skeptic regardless of what I've seen in my life, because I just feel like if you put all your eggs in one basket, you're never going to truly see the whole picture. So I believe in a lot of weird superstitious things myself, but at the same time, I am very pragmatic about it.
Okay, tell me your superstition.
I will not wear long socks or white socks to any sort of outdoor event, because apparently my grandma used to believe that if you get stained socks, you will have bad luck. So I always wear black socks and they never go higher than my ankle.
Wow.
Yeah, weird one, huh? Apparently it's an old Southern thing. I don't know.
Oh man. I think we all have them. If I look at mine, you know, I always have to, like, if I on the radio show on our YouTube channel, you have to hear it on the YouTube channel, but we have a separate intro on our YouTube channel to start the show. And we have Ronald Reagan talking about his UN speech about UFOs and aliens if they ever invaded the earth. And I always have to try and mouth that before the show. If I don't have a good show. You know, it's amazing how we fall into these little categories, man.
It's just the way you hype up, you know? It's the same thing with me in the music, you know? I've got to do a certain routine or I just feel like I'm going to be off, you know?
I hear you. We got about 45 seconds left with you tonight, Swampy, and I always appreciate you taking the time. And I know you don't do a lot of podcast radio shows or other YouTube channels, but you've always been a great supporter of Spaced Out Radio. And I just want to publicly thank you for the love and support, man.
Yeah, of course. I love coming on here. And as I always say, anytime you want me on, just shoot me a message and we'll figure out a day.
You got that right. Tell everybody where they can find your channel.
You can find me pretty much anywhere on the internet as Swamp Dweller, and I will pop up, and I upload multiple videos every single week on all platforms, and hope to see you there.
We love it when you're here too, my man. So thank you very much, and good luck on your road trip and your tour with your band. Burn Absolute. Share some music with us sometimes. Coming up next on Spaced Out Radio, we got a story from Swamp Dweller from his wonderful YouTube channel, and Lee Strauss filling in for Jackie Harmon on the Cryptid Report next.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
That was a great show. Appreciate you. And we'll talk soon, buddy.
All right. Talk to you soon, brother.
All right, my man. Take care. Swamp Dweller, everybody. Love that guy. Love him. I'll be right back. I am back. We got about a minute to go here. Big thank you tonight to Tim, Richard ×2, Simon ×2, Jojo, Road Flare, and T-Bone, my man, for the wonderful super chats. Really appreciate the love and support. Walter, thank you for adding to it. Very much appreciate the love and support, my man. Thank you. Let's put that one up there. And we got Lee coming in here momentarily. It's been a while since we had Lee on. And just for you guys, he is wearing a double extra small shirt tonight to show off his biceps and triceps. You know, his pectorals are flaring as we speak, nipples popping out. Oh, Lee, I love you, buddy. I love you. Got to get Lee up here for an investigation. Have to. No choice. No choice at all. All right, everybody, we're going to get going here in 5 seconds. Here we go. Here comes the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate you tuning us on in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Swampy. Swampy is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. It is that time of the night where we head to the swamp. Yeah, Swamp Dweller has another creepy story for us.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. I fell asleep quickly, but was woken up at 12 a.m. by a gunshot. It sounded like it was on the other side of the mountain, and I largely ignored it, figuring that hunters were after deer or a wild pig. I fell back asleep again pretty quickly, and did not sleep as deeply as before. I was awoken again by a much louder gunshot from about an hour later. This shot had definitely been fired somewhere inside my little bowl in the bush, and it was large caliber rifle for sure. The echo was huge in this confined valley. I begun to feel nervous. What if they were taking shots and my van happened to be in the way, and if they missed their target? I peeked through my curtains and saw my fire still had a few glowing embers. I hoped that the hunters might see it and know not to shoot in my direction. That was my biggest concern at the time. For the next hour or so, I drifted in and out of sleep, snapping awake and aware at the smallest of noise. On one of these bouts of drifting out of consciousness, I heard a sound that had me sitting straight up in my bed. I hit my head on the roof of the van pretty hard, but did not even notice as I was concerning and concentrating on the noise that woke me. Tires. Tires rolling and grinding on the rocky dirt track leading to my campsite. Now I'm sure there could be a few reasonable explanations for a car taking this isolated dead road in the middle of the night. I even tried to think of some, but I failed because I was too on edge and just sat there in my bed, straining my ears to the utmost to try to figure out what this car was doing. Suddenly, my van was filled with a shockingly bright light as the mystery car turns into the campsite and faced toward my van. I waited for the headlights to give way, but they didn't. I couldn't see the car. My van has curtains at every window, and like I was parting them to give whoever was out there a good look into the van and at me. I was already feeling pretty spooked, but my terror rose sky high as I realized the car was now slowly driving towards me. The lights got brighter, the rumble of the diesel engine got louder, and
This sounded like the biggest tires in the freaking world popped and grated on the rocks underneath them. By this time, I'm frozen into place, too terrified to move a muscle, as this four-wheel drive beast of a car slowly kept driving towards me until it was nose to nose with my tiny van. The headlights were so blinding, even through my curtains, that I had to turn back to face the other way. Then, I almost peed my pants. Whoever the asswipe was driving this car started revving his engine, over and over, harder and harder, and longer each time. It was the most aggressive sound that I have ever heard coming from a machine, and I honestly can't tell you how freaking scared I was. I didn't know it was possible to feel more terror than I was already feeling, but I found out quickly it is always possible to reach higher levels of fear when I heard the sound of 2 car doors opening. I was too scared to move, but I broke through a fear of paralysis long enough to grab my 6-inch hunting knife from the shelf above my head. I gripped it with the white knuckles as I listened to a pair of heavy footsteps start walking slowly toward my van. The other person must have been standing just outside their car, watching and waiting, as I didn't hear a second pair of footsteps. Maybe they were more stealthy and quiet. All I know is that my straining ears were focused solely on the slow, purposeful steps of the first stranger as they stopped beside the sliding door of my van, where I had dumped my 2 pairs of shoes. My van was locked at every entry point, but 100 what-if scenarios were running through my head at light speed. Maybe I could dive into the driver's seat of the van and belt out of there. Fat chance. With them being parked right in front of me, even if I did manage to drive around them, I still had 30 kilometers of rush bush to navigate. Bush tracks that are far superior. I'd be run down by their big truck in a matter of meters. I could string my bow and jump out and confront them, but then I'd never been so keen on suicide, so I thought I'd give that one a miss. I didn't even have a map of the area, so running like a scattered rabbit into the bush wasn't even an option. Oh, the irony. So, what I did do was wait, frozen, in my sitting position, still white-knuckling my knife. While Person 1 finally moved away from the side door of my van and back to their car, their engine was revved again and again, as if trying to scare me out. I still sat there. I sat still for what felt like hours, but was most likely only minutes as I vaguely heard voices under the rumble of the engine. I couldn't make out a word, but the voices sounded male, and eventually, it just got into the car and slowly rolled away. I know how anticlimactic that sounds, but honestly, I don't really care. At the time, I was so filled with relief, so great that I was almost high off of it, and at the time, so exhausted from the adrenaline dump, I felt like I could sleep for weeks with no worries. I didn't sleep though. Thoughts of just hiding around the corner on the road, waiting for me to take a break for it, running through my head, as irrational as that sounds, I think was the most confusing and scary thing about it. I just have absolutely no idea what their intentions were. They could have been just hunters, but maybe they saw my fire and thought they'd come down and freak me out. I'm not sure. They could have had much darker things in their mind though. Could have been locals wanting to play a prank to relieve their small town boredom. If anyone wants to shed some light on it, go for it. After 20 minutes of silence, I finally managed to pry my fingers off the handle of the knife one by one, using my left hand to do it. I put my knife beside me on the bed and sat staring glassy-eyed at the curtain on my rear window, with my knees pulled to my chest until faint light filtered through the material, turning my interior from black to smoky gray. I peeked out the pre-dawn day and saw no car, no other people, just more rabbits who I now could not find the heart to hunt. I opened the sliding door and struggled outside, feeling like it was a dream. I made a cup of the strongest coffee in the world and sipped on it while staring distractedly at the footprints surrounding the van. Then I got to the driver's seat and drove an hour back to the main road. I kept expecting to see the car around each hidden bend, but really, I would have no idea if I saw it or not. I never saw anything of the vehicle or men who terrorized me. So that was that. I drove on to the Blue Mountains and met up with some Belgian friends and ended up sticking with them for the rest of the 6-week trip. But I never forgot the feeling of being so scared and so helpless and so alone. Really, if ever, do I choose to camp in an empty campsite now? I'll move to another one with more people.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another spooky story. If you want more just like that, head on over to youtube.com/Swamp Dweller Reads. Hit subscribe, ring that bell, because he deserves it. He's a great, great storyteller. We want you to be involved as well.
Oh, hello, Jackie.
All right, filling in for Jackie Harmon tonight on the Cryptid Report. We got Lee Strauss here, a man who always wears double XL small, not double XL, but double X small.
This is fine. What are you talking about? This is fine.
I don't know, man.
Is it a little too tight? I mean, I don't think so. It just fits good.
I'm just jealous you're in shape. That's all it is. It's pure jealousy, my man. How you doing?
Doing great. I'm doing good. I'm just glad to be on. It's been 2 weeks since I've been on with all the fires down in SoCal and so forth. Jackie hasn't been feeling up to it at all, dealing with all of that. And I am just glad to be on with you tonight. And we will be on Friday. Mm-hmm.
It's always nice to have you guys on. And we love it when you're here. And thank you for filling in for tonight. We really do appreciate the love that you have for this show and the dedication as well, my friend. There's a lot of weird, strange, cryptid things happening around right now. I mean, Bigfoot sightings seem to be up.
Yeah, they are up. I get online on Facebook and in a couple different other places, and I'm reading through these things too. I have a real interest in Bigfoot. Even though I come from like the UFO background, I still have a great interest in Bigfoot. And there's so much more now than ever before of these incidences where Bigfoot and UFOs are seen in the same location, as well as orbs and all those other things. So paranormal, it seems like, that whole field is just shooting through the roof right now. And I don't know if that's just because of the extra tensions that are going on around the world and how everybody's feeling kind of down and low lately. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely a larger and much more heightened emphasis on this planet and whatever's going on down here for sure.
Things, and we'll get into a little bit of UFO chatter in the next half hour, but one of the things that scares me, I don't know if it scares you or not, because you're much more brave than I am going into the forest. But sea monsters scare me.
Anything to do with water, Dave, scares the heck out of me. I've heard conversations where you've talked about sharks and that sort of thing, how scared you are. But it's same with me. I have a problem with water. If I can't see the bottom, I am freaked out. So I bought a kayak years ago because I'm going to conquer my fear of water, and so forth. So bought a kayak, paddle out there, even though I'm scared to death, and, around in the San Juan Islands and different lakes and stuff like that, just because I want to get over that fear. But
not me, man. Not me. You know what the turning point for me was when I was working in radio on Vancouver Island. And I had to cover this tourism event for our radio station. And they had this fishing lodge there from a town on the west coast of Vancouver Island called Bamfield. And now this is going back to 1999. I was covering this story. And they were telling me a story about how the great white sharks were at that point, we're just starting to develop a taste for West Coast salmon. Because normally sharks were seen maybe as north as Oregon, southern Washington state, but never really up higher. And they had caught on one of their trips a 20-foot great white. Right? And I was like, I am never going in the ocean again. because I lived on the other side of the island,
Uh-huh.
and the beach was probably, I don't know, a mile and a half from my house. And like you get that ocean breeze and that every day smell, you could smell the sea salt, and that was wonderful. Don't get me wrong, that was wonderful. But
Yeah.
there are just certain things, man, when you start realizing that there are, man eaters out there. That was it. I never did salt water again. And I had to overcome my fear to go belly boating, because my friends and I, we used to belly boat in lakes. I'd overcome my fear in that,
Yeah.
and scared the daylights out of me in one lake, where we're at this lake at the top of the mountain. And a belly boat, when you're paddling with your flippers, you're always traveling backwards. Well, all
Ah.
of a sudden I felt something rub on the bottom of my butt and the bottom of my belly boat. I look down and I see this white thing, and I'm like, and I just screamed like a banshee. It was a log. It was a log underwater, but it was just enough where all of a sudden you hear that dun it, dun it, dun it, dun it, dun it, dun it, dun it. And
Yeah. That's definitely a healthy fear. Even I have just being out there on the water, being on the sound, and then having a big wake come by and then push your kayak just right. And it's like, it's something.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is one of the Facebook pages that I absolutely love and follow is one called Creepy Acres. And they put in these articles today in creepy history. And on this date in 1965, in the Han River in Da Nang, Vietnam. So this is, right at the height of the Vietnam War. This is a story. As the Vietnam War rages, two personnel from the 311th Air Commando Squadron of the 315th Air Command Group, as well as several members of the United States Marine Corps, leave the U.S. Air Force Base in Da Nang, now the Da Nang International Airport, in a helicopter and begin heading east. They are flying low over the Han River when the group notices something on the water below. They are startled by what they see. There, snaking its way downriver, is an immense creature. The bright yellow serpent-like monster has 4 large flippers and a powerful tail that thrashes at the river's dark waters. However, more striking is its sheer size. Witnesses describe this beast as being about 80 feet long. The story would be filed in archive by the U.S. Army in a document entitled Sea Serpent. In years since, the document has been declassified.
Wow.
There is no way I'm ever going fishing in the Han River in Vietnam. No.
Yeah, I think I'd be safe here in America, but I'm not traveling somewhere else like New Zealand or Australia or the Han River. There's no way I'm going to be getting in the water, in those places where I don't, have a really good idea of what I'm getting into. I think I want to know about.
Right.
Yeah.
But can you imagine, like, dude, I have Okanagan Lake 4.5 hours south of me if I'm driving. And there's the legend of Ogopogo in there. Okay.
Oh.
I don't go in that lake. I even hate crossing it on a bridge because it's going to be that one day. With my luck, I know that it's going to be that one day I'm driving across the 4-lane bridge, and Lee, that thing's going to jump out at me, and it's going to hit my car, and probably
swallow your car. Yeah,
if anything like that happens, it's going to happen to me. It always happens to me. This is why I don't put myself in predicaments.
Well, you kind of do, Dave. I'm going to say you kind of go looking for Bigfoot, and you kind of go, ghost hunting, and things happen to you. They do. And I think there's certain individuals that are predisposed, to have these things happen, Dave. And you might be the guy It's driving
I'm-
across the bridge, and
Mhm.
Ogopogo jumps out of the water.
Right? I'm
Yeah,
totally that
yeah.
guy. I'm
Yeah.
I'm tired of taking the chance, man. You know?
Yeah.
Like seriously, it's we can laugh and we can make fun of these monsters and cryptids and UFOs and everything, but there is a real reality to this, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
You've experienced all sorts of phenomena. I've experienced all sorts of phenomena. How does that reality affect what you do going into an investigation?
Well, especially when I'm going to a new location, like I will be this coming weekend, you have to look at your surroundings. Once you get into a location, look around, see if there's any other vehicles nearby. First of all, you got to worry about people. Who's nearby. People are my worst fear, first of all. And then you get into the area, and then you start looking for signs of things. Obviously Bigfoot, or in this case, I'm going to be looking for debris of a train crash. But you have to know what your surroundings are, and it takes a long time to feel comfortable in the woods. We're going up north. So what have they done recently up north is they've introduced grizzly bears back into Washington State, in the northern part of Washington State. So those sorts of things, yeah, I'm a little hesitant. I've never been in grizzly country, but yet now we're getting grizzlies back in here. So those sorts of things I'm really concerned about and want to protect myself from. So then, after you look at the knowns, you got to look at the unknowns. What's the possibility? Where's my exit? If something happens, what are my exit points here? You always want to try to have a backup upon a backup if something goes wrong. So this will be more of a ghost investigation. Of course, talking with you earlier, I might, or I probably will, take some trail cameras out there, and I might leave them out there for the season where we're going, just so that we can record any other phenomena in the area, over the winter. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But yes.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about tonight is I want you to test out my theory.
Yes.
If you are able to find this train crash site, do we know if people passed away in that train crash?
93 people died.
Oh my God. Okay. See, I have a theory, Lee, and you could actually test it out for me. And I'm going to use you as a science experiment. But I mean that with all due respect. I want you to look for Bigfoot signs around there. And here's my reasoning why, if you find the place. In my area with Flight 21, I believe the Sasquatch in that area are guardians of the spirits there.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have had a lot of interaction in that area, but they always usually have us on a timeline. And when they want us gone, they let us know that it's time to leave. And I'm very curious if you find signs there in and around that train crash of whether or not they will A, allow you there, or B, allow some sort of sign that they are there. So I'm very curious about seeing how this goes for you. And we're going to continue this conversation when we return on the Cryptid Report. Lee Strauss filling in for Jackie Harmon tonight on the Cryptid Report. We'll be right back on Spaced Out Radio.
This is Spaced Out Radio and your host, Dave Scott.
All right, buddy. We're clear.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll continue that conversation when we come back. I was going to now, but but it's kind of like damn it, if I do it now, then I'm not going to be able to continue it for a radio audience.
Yeah,
Always
exactly.
find that balance, you know.
Right. Absolutely. You do a much better job than I do. So you've had years and years of experience.
You guys are doing great. Doing great.
Need to sit.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, so I moved my computer into my dining room.
Yeah.
For the time being, I'm out of that guest room there. It's much better for me anyway.
You rebel. You are a rebel.
Well, that way I can stand up or sit down, you know, especially if I've had a hard day at work and my back's sore.
I hear you there.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you there.
One thing that I've noticed that I've been looking at lately is the fact that most of these sightings, Bigfoot sightings, it seems like the Bigfoot know there's somebody watching them. And a lot of the fake ones that I believe are fake, the Bigfoot, are acting like they don't know the people are watching. So I think there's a difference. Like they might have some sort of psychic ability to know when people are around. Mm-hmm.
I think they do.
Mm-hmm.
I totally think they do. I'm debating whether I'm hungry here or not.
So what's the story? You want me to come up there before the snow flies?
Hang on, we'll take you to the Sasquatch spot. Why not? We kind of talked about it.
Yeah, we have. I'm just trying to think about when we have time between now and when snow flies.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's the problem.
There's a reason why they only allow snow tires here up until or as of October 1st. You got to have snow tires.
Oof. Okay. What about 4-wheel drive?
4-wheel drive works. Oh my gosh. I read this meme earlier today. Let me just see if I can remember it. Was playing air drums in my car, but I dropped an air stick. Oh no, pardon me. Was playing air drums in my car to Metallica when I dropped an air stick and then had to switch to Def Leppard. I thought that was brilliant today.
That's hilarious. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I don't think I'd look good with a handlebar mustache. I'm just saying.
Dude, you should drop that handlebar mustache, man.
Oh, no.
Oh, dude. Yes. 100% agreement. The extra small shirts plus the handlebar mustache.
Ugh.
That is sexy hot right there. Sexy.
I'd probably have to get some sort of, tattoos on my arms too or something. And
No, you just need a leather band strap around your wrist instead of the beads. And you need a gold Timex watch or a faux gold Timex watch on the other hand.
And the bandana, of course.
Oh, hell yes.
Shoot.
Big thank you tonight to Simon with a hat trick, along with Road Flare, Walter, Jojo, Richard ×2, T-Bone, and Tim. We greatly appreciate the love and support, everybody. And we're going to get going here in about 20 seconds. So just sit back, relax, enjoy, and stare at Lee's nice trapezius muscles that are jutting out of that extra small shirt. Oh, brother.
Oh boy.
All right, man. Here we go. All right, here we go. Final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're loving broadcasting tonight's show to you. I hope you're enjoying it as well as we continue on with the cryptid report here momentarily. I want to remind all of you that if you missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Filling in for Jackie Harmon on the Cryptid Report is Lee Strauss here tonight, who has a wonderful show with Jackie on our YouTube channel on Friday nights starting at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, called Element 115. So we all suggest you go check that out on our YouTube channel anytime you want. Lee, thank you for being here.
Oh, no problem. Loving it.
Was chatting with you here just a little bit ago before the break about an experiment I want you to do.
Yeah.
Because I believe Sasquatch can, in certain areas, be a protector of the lost souls after a major incident. And you were explain this area where you're going.
Okay. It's called the Wellington disaster. And what happened was there was a huge avalanche where these train cars were full of people and basically killed 92 people and swept the train down into the gully. And it's supposedly extremely haunted. They don't use that train track anymore ever since that. In fact, the town of Wellington is gone. So our goal is to go in there and do a night investigation in the old train tunnel and on the hillside where this disaster occurred. And maybe a little bit into the town of Wellington, the old town of Wellington that's in there. And we would like to set up trail cameras, Dave, to leave around over the winter, just to see if we capture any kind of other activity or phenomena in that location over, a 6 month span. So that's what we're hoping to do. And like you were telling me, you said that Bigfoot, might protect the area from those, the area, because there's lots of souls that are there possibly. So that's it. That's interesting to me. If we get some Bigfoot evidence as well, we will be looking for that sort of thing when we go in there. So our hopes are high. Let's just say that. And I don't know, because of the area that you were in, or that you were up in Canada there, where with the plane crash, if that's where they hang out because of the lost souls, or if that's just a spot, a big open area for them to be. This gully where this train crashed into, there's not a whole lot of room for Bigfoot to have like a clan or anything like that. It's pretty much a steep ravine, so it'll be interesting.
But in our area, the Sasquatch are all around the crash site. I don't know if they go in. I don't think they do. That I'm theorizing here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't think they go in. I think that they protect the area. So I think it would be wise for you to try that.
Yeah. Yeah. It brings up a thought for me too. You know how you're driving your car? This is kind of going off topic, but dives back into it. You know how you're driving your car along down the freeway or down the road, and you can feel somebody staring at you.
Yes.
Right? And so then you look and turn, and of course they're staring at you, right? So my thought, Dave, is that if we're in a Bigfoot area, that maybe they can or they do pick up on the fact that we're there. They have some sort of psychic ability, much higher and much greater than our own. And so the thought is that they probably know or can sense the fact that there are dead people in the area or souls, and maybe they have some level of communication with them because of their heightened ability.
And that's a strong possibility too, my man. Very strong possibility. My big thing is, what I would like to see, if you could do it, is you're going into these tunnels, you're going into these other places that are surrounding it. We know that in Washington State, the minute you enter the mountains, there's Sasquatch there. We know that. There's no real spot where there isn't. You know what I'm saying? And I think in this area, and once again, I'm all theorizing. I could be completely wrong for your area. It could be completely wrong in my theory. But I just have a feeling that there are going to be Sasquatch roaming around there trying to figure out, what does this stranger want with these souls that are here? And, like 52 people up here died in the plane crash in 1965. You've got 92, 98, 93 there who plunged to their death after an avalanche. A horrific way to die. I mean, there's not many worse ways to go than that.
Being suffocated by all that snow.
And so I'm just curious if, just by chance, those spirits are protected by the Sasquatch. And I bet you find signs. I bet you do. You know what you're looking for.
I do, thanks to Jackie.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. So tell our audience then, what will you be looking for?
Well, I'll be looking for broken, twisted branches, your typical type of tree structures where you have several trees that are crisscrossing on top of each other. And then, also those trees don't look like they originate from that location, because it doesn't look like there's a root ball attached, or, things have been moved over. So they're usually some of that stuff, sure, falls on each other. But then you see where, okay, there's a root ball here that doesn't originate from the ground here, because the ground's flat. Doesn't look like anything was pulled up here. It was brought in, right? Also, the tree branches, I've seen this several times now, where it looks like when they break, they're twisted, and all the fibers are twisted in knot patterns almost, and then interlaced and bent over in directions and this and that. And so those are the sorts of things I'm looking for. Even things maybe like odd stacked rocks, or pine cones in a pattern, or any of these sorts of things is what I'm looking for.
That's what I look for. I haven't seen the twisting yet. I'd like to see the twisting. I haven't seen that yet. The closest we found was that staff that was left for Merle.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, that was totally twisted. But like seeing a big tree that's been twisted, in our area, we're now starting to get the trees that are bent over and stuck into the ground. That's really interesting. For sure.
Sure. But I've seen it, Dave. It's like they take the branch or the whatever it is, and they twist it a couple times, and all the fibers are just rotated, 360 degrees, and it's all sticking out. So it's definitely something that has to be done purposefully. It's not just a break, from snow load or another branch coming down and hitting it and breaking it. This is purposeful.
Oh, fully agree. We got about 11 minutes to go. I do want to touch on some UFO stuff with you, because I know you've been searching around, and how's that going for you?
I went to Baker Lake by Mountain Baker a couple weekends ago. It was flat. It was dead, Dave. Usually when I get into an area, I can tell just how it feels, if there's going to be any or much activity. And all I saw that night was smoke, a lot of smoke, and some satellites. So, I did see Starlink and recorded that, but that's something common
For our
stuff.
audience who does some sky watching, and I wish I could do some sky watching tonight because the northern lights are supposed to be out, but it's cloudy out. For those who are sky watching, how do they tell the difference between what's a satellite and what's not?
Well, I've got an app that I use if I'm confused about what I'm looking at. You got to know, what the ISS looks like. It's a bigger ball of light that comes across. But the way to tell, there's telltale signs for me that I use. Well, if it makes a right angle turn or a U or any kind of deviation from its trajectory, which is hard to tell sometimes because you look at the stars in a way, and sometimes it looks like it may be weaving in and out, but that's just, that's the trick of the eye. So if it deviates much from its path, if it's flashing different colors, I mean, you've got planes that flash different colors, but you're looking for things that flash wildly different colors, not just like a red and a green or, landing lights or those sorts of things. You're looking for something definitely different. You'll see star point light, right? Which is more of a pinpoint light. And that's typically from an aircraft. What you're looking for in a UFO is something more diffuse and not so sharp.
Well, let me ask you this one then, because one of the things that I have noticed in the sky that I'm not too sure about is if you watch enough satellites, they all seem to be going at a certain speed. But then there's these ones that are just cruising, man. Like they seem to be at the same altitude, the same brightness and everything like that. But these ones just seem to be absolutely cruising on by.
Yeah.
Is just their altitude or where they're set, or is this something different?
Yeah, you kind of have to look at the Earth and the atmosphere as like an onion in gradients and how far out. The closer the satellite is to Earth, the faster it's going to be moving. Like SpaceX, all of those satellites are going to be moving pretty quick because they're closer in. The farther the satellite is out, it's going to be moving slower. So you can't say that speed necessarily means that it's a UFO. You're looking for odd colors. You're looking for deviation. And the other thing is, Dave, if it's a UFO, you can talk to it and tell it to do something. And most likely it will do it. If you ask it to change colors, to flash for you, to do those sorts of things. There's tumbling space junk. Okay. So you have to think about things that used to have, panels on it that would reflect the sun. So you'll get this flash. And then you start doing a count 1, 2, 3 until the next flash. And if it's a rhythmic flashing, then it's probably not a UFO.
Have you ever tried laser pointers?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on those?
When I was down at ECETI, we did laser pointers and we got a reaction, but I think it wasn't necessarily the laser pointers. I think it was the collective mind, all of us there, and it wanting to perform for us at the time because we were generally very excited when it flashed back at us. And not just one pulse. We're talking like huge pulses of light, In fact, one pulse was so bright, I actually got a migraine after looking at it. So, but it seemed generally excited that we were excited about the experience. So laser pointers work. I do think, I think they're able to tap into what we're thinking in our own heads and we may not need laser pointers.
I just bought a couple. I'm waiting for them to get here. I want to test it out. I have one other laser pointer, but the damn USB plug-in broke off and is now stuck inside because they're so cheaply glued on there.
Yeah, they are.
So go get a couple others. But one of the things that I noticed is these power-ups.
Yep.
What do you think of the power-up? This is one of the big controversies of UFO sky watching.
Okay. Like I said, with debris in space, right? It can reflect sunlight. So you got to think, it gets complicated, but you got to think about what time of the night you're seeing this flash in the sky. Where's the sun on the other side of the planet during that time? If it's, 12 midnight, there should not be any flashing. Okay. You're going to get that between 9 o'clock and 10:30, 11 maybe. And on the reverse side, you're looking at it from 3 in the morning on, because of the sun reflection and how it could be an Earth's shadow from the sun. So there are certain times of night, if you see a flash like that, it's most likely real. Could be a real craft.
Yeah, that's something that was interesting, because I think the sun will reflect off of metal up to 2.5 hours after sundown.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you're looking for. If it's in that sweet spot of time, around midnight or just after midnight, till 2:30 or whatever, 3 o'clock, you're probably, the bet is that you're looking at something unknown.
And then when it starts all of a sudden doing these power-ups, do you think that is something extraterrestrial, or do you think that is something more natural?
Well, once again, as long as it's in that window of time, those power-ups can be, it could be a craft. Sure, I'm not going to say that it absolutely 100% is, but the likelihood is very high.
I always wondered about that, because we were at our Sasquatch area a couple weeks ago now, and we actually had a how can I put it? A power-up session where it powered up 6-7 times. Because I tend to think, maybe I'm going to turn up the woo here a little bit, to put a little tinfoil on. I tend to think these power-ups, that they can hear you, because you're like, can you power up for me, please? And all of a sudden, boom, there it is. And then it'll go dead for the longest time and say, oh, come on, just one more. And then boom, there it is. And you're like, come on, one more. And it doesn't happen. But if it was something that was controlled, or the sun breaking over it or something, you would see it as it flies by, almost looking like an airplane with the flashing going on. You know what I'm saying?
Because it's rotating and it's capturing that light, and it's
exactly
back at you.
On it.
Yeah, you bring in the woo, and that, I have to ask you how you felt in that moment when you saw it happening. I think you can gather that information for yourself, based on how you feel when you're witnessing it, whether or not it's something legit.
To me, it feels like a form of communication. And again, I got to say, as an experiencer, I'm going to give more credence to the experience than the actual scientific fact. But that being said, I do know this: satellites don't have lights on them.
That's correct.
So when we see something flying a couple of hours after sunrise, I'm not sure if that's the moon reflecting off of it, if say you're on a full moon night, or the moonlight reflecting off of it. I don't know, because the moon's dark too. It's a reflection of, it's the sun shining on it. That's why it is what it is. But I'm just not sure what this is all about.
Well, if you think about the moon being up in the sky, what's the possibility that you've got an object flying across the sky and it's going to capture the moonlight and then reflect it back down on Earth? I think that's, with the brightness, the intensity of the moon is much less than the sun. So it's going to be a very, very faint flash, if you can even detect it with your own eye. You might be able to see that with, a pair of night vision binoculars or like a psionics or a Luna optics, but I don't think you're going to be able to see that with the naked eye at all.
Yeah, we did try night vision on them. One was really big, because there's another thing is the size of them, Lee. Sometimes they look like just little specks of dust, and the other time they look as big as Jupiter.
Yeah. Well, if it's big as Jupiter and you're looking in that window of time where there shouldn't be anything flashing at you, there's a good chance, Dave. There's really a good chance that you're looking at an extraterrestrial craft. So
we got aliens, buddy.
Yeah,
we got aliens.
We
Lee
do.
Strauss, thank you for filling in for Jackie Harmon. I'll let you go to bed now because I know you got to be up in like 38 minutes for work. But I really appreciate you coming on in and filling in for Jackie tonight.
No problem.
And your beard looks good, but maybe use a men's shirt next time.
Whoa, Dave, I'm hurt.
Well, rather than a child's extra small. I don't know how you fall into that. Lee, thank you, buddy. As we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at #SpacedOutRadio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. Hot damn, Lee, we are done. Done.
Oh boy, that's good.
That's how we roll around here.
I did make some notes and stuff like that. I'll carry that into our show on Friday.
Yeah, man. I think it'll be fun. I think you're gonna have a blast trying that out, man.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. I love going on these adventures and going to new places and seeing what kind of activity we can drum up.
Who's going with you?
My partner Ander.
Right.
And then also we'll have Alex with us.
Very
Mr.
cool,
I got nothing. That's what we say about him.
Right on. That is fantastic.
It's a blast.
Absolutely fantastic, my man. I wish I could come with you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, we've talked about going and doing things. So maybe next season we can head down to Adams. But yeah, I need to get up to Canada. I need to check out your spot. I really do. You go there, often enough and have quite a bit of paranormal phenomenon happening, and I just need to get up there and check it out.
Well, you know what? One of the big things that is going to be very interesting with it is just the idea that you're going to be able to tell whether or not there's similarities between what you're covering there and what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's exciting when you can take those similarities and start to draw some sort of conclusion or hypothesis,
Exactly. I love it too when you can hear someone else's story, and a lot of what they're saying is stuff that you've been through or stuff that's happened to you. Yeah. And so it brings that, it's like a bond that you instantly have with that person, even if that person's on your show and I'm listening to that person talk about his experiences or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, it's so reassuring, that what you dealt with wasn't just your imagination, that this is happening with other people.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And trust me, man, I want to get Samantha Mowat into that area, Mount Adams. I want to see what she would communicate with. Not saying, nothing against Jackie or anything like that, but because Jackie is very talented in her intuition and everything. But to get that secondary piece, it would just add more structure to everything. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. We fully believe there's a family of them, and they're not hostile. They're not.
Yeah, I want to go there so bad, dude. So bad. What time do you got to get up for work?
2:45.
Go to bed.
I'm heading there now.
All right, brother. You take
care. All right.
Of
You too.
All right, bro. Please trust everybody. Tomorrow night on the show, Olaf Phillips is going to join us, where we are going to get into his new book regarding alchemy and secret codes and ciphers and everything. It's going to be a great show. I hope you come back and enjoy that one with us. Big thank you tonight to Simon with a hat trick, Jojo, Richard ×2. Let's see here. Road Flare, Walter, T-Bone, my man, and Tim. I'm going to cut out a little bit early because my throat is sore. And so I'm going to just go shut up for a while. I hope you guys have a great time. We'll see you tomorrow night. And thank you for being here. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that bell. We are here 7 days a week. Talk to you soon.
healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.